The car died on a dark country road, rain hammering the roof. Chanel Whitfield was 28, a black community center worker, with 2 small children in the back seat. That same morning, she'd learned the center was sold to a holding company. Now the engine was silent. Noah stared out the window. Amara started to cry. So Chanel turned the fear into a game. Count the lights, she told them. First one to spot headlights wins. She crouched between the seats, soaked cardigan clinging to her shoulders, and made them laugh while her own hands shook. Down that same road came Yoon Tae-sung, 36, a Korean mafia boss they called the Quiet One. A black dragon inked up the left side of his neck. His private jet had made an emergency landing in the storm. His car slowed beside a stranded woman who was still laughing with her kids in the rain. He offered help. She refused, until she knew exactly who he was. He should have driven on. Instead, he stayed, grounded in her town while they inspected his jet. And Chanel began to notice something. The company that closed her center, the one that bought the old depot, the empty lots near the airport. All of them ran through the same accounting office. She was the only person alive who could connect the dots, and she had no idea what those dots would cost her. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Chanel turned the key a 4th time, and the engine gave her nothing but a cough and a click. She let her hand fall from the ignition. On the dashboard, one orange light held steady, the same light that had blinked at her all week and she had told herself she would deal with next paycheck. The wipers had stopped halfway across the glass. Rain sheeted down the windshield and turned the road ahead into a smear of black and gray. From the back seat, Noah leaned forward as far as his belt allowed. "Is it dead, Mom?" "It's resting," she said. "That's what dead means." She almost laughed. 7 years old and already reading her like a receipt. She twisted around to look at him. He had his hood up over the yellow raincoat, and beside him, Amara had both boots kicked out straight, the purple rubber catching the last of the dome light before it dimmed and went brown and finally died too. "Where's the light going?" Amara asked. "Battery's tired." Chanel reached back and squeezed the small foot. Everything on this old girl gets tired at the same time. She pulled her phone from the cup holder and thumbed it awake. 9%. 1 bar that flickered to nothing when she lifted it toward the roof, then came back as half a bar when she set it in her lap. She knew this stretch. Route 9, the county road that ran flat and empty between the edge of town and the industrial park, the shortcut she took to shave 20 minutes off the drive home from her sister's. No houses out here. Fields on one side, a drainage ditch and a line of dark trees on the other. She had passed a gas station 4 or 5 miles back, and there was nothing ahead until the turnoff. She tried her sister first. It rang once and dropped. She tried again and got the 3 tones and a recording. She looked at the battery. 8%. "Okay," she said, mostly to herself. "Okay, what?" Noah asked. "Okay, we wait for the rain to ease up, and then I call somebody, and they come get us." She said it in the flat, sure voice she used at work when a parent came in shaking and needing to hear that a plan existed. It was the voice that had gotten her hired at the community center 6 years ago, and it worked on her own kids about half as well as it worked on strangers. Noah sat back. His jaw was doing the thing his fathers used to do, sliding sideways while he thought. Amara started humming. Chanel put the phone face down on her thigh to save the light and looked out at the road. 2 hours ago, she had been standing in her sister's kitchen with a mug going cold in her hand, hearing the same sentence 3 different ways, until it finally landed. The center had been sold. Not might be. Not was in talks. Sold, closed on, signed. A holding company out of the city had bought the building and the lot and the little parking strip where she ran the after-school pickup, and the letter had gone to the board 2 days ago, and somehow the last person to hear about it was the woman who ran the programs inside it. She had smiled at her sister and finished her coffee and buckled the kids in and driven off like a person who still had a job. Rain drummed the roof. Somewhere under it the ditch was filling. She could hear the water moving even with the windows up. She tried the key once more, out of stubbornness. Click. Nothing turned over. She held the key a second longer than made sense, the way you hold a door handle after you already know it's locked, and then she let go. The car had made its decision. she would have to make hers around it. She ran the money in her head because the money was always the first thing to run itself when a plan broke. A tow was 200 she didn't have. The mechanic her cousin used would take payments, but he was on the far side of town and closed until 7. Her checking account had a number in it she already knew to the dollar, and the number did not stretch to a tow and groceries and Noah's field trip fee that was due Friday. And now, on top of all of it, there was no job at the end of the month to make the number grow back. The center's last direct deposit would land in 2 weeks, and then the account would just be a bucket with a hole in it. She stopped the thought there, not in front of them, even asleep. Especially in front of them. "I'm hungry," Amara announced. "I know, baby." "Noah has crackers." "I don't," Noah said too fast. "You do. In your bag. The orange ones." Chanel reached back with an open palm. Noah looked at the hand, then at his sister, then dug into the front pocket of his backpack and produced a half-crushed sleeve of cheese crackers. He put it in his mother's hand with the expression of a man surrendering the last of his fortune. She split them dead even, counted them out loud, 1 for you, 1 for you, and when there was an odd cracker left over, she broke it in half so neither of them could claim the other got more. Amara ate hers in tiny bites to make them last. Noah ate his in 2. The phone buzzed against her leg. She snatched it up. A weather alert, red band across the top, flash flood warning for the county until midnight. 7%. She closed it before it could drain her further and pressed the button to sleep the screen. The dark came in then, full and close. No dome light, no dashboard, no phone, just the gray water running down the glass and the shapes of the trees when the wind pushed them. Amara stopped chewing. "Mom, I'm right here." "It's really dark." "It is. I don't like it." Chanel unclipped her own belt. The cardigan she had on, the camel one, was still half damp from the dash across her sister's yard, and it had gone cold against her arms. She climbed between the front seats, awkward, one knee on the console, and folded herself into the back between the 2 car seats. It was not built for a grown woman, and she did not care. She got an arm around each of them. "Better?" Amara pressed her face into her mother's side. Noah didn't answer, but he leaned in. She could feel both hearts going. Amara's quick, Noah's slower, and working hard to stay slow. A boy holding his own fear down flat because he had decided, somewhere in the last year, that it was his job. That was the thing she could not stand. Not the dark, not the dead car, the sight of her son deciding he had to be a man in the back seat of a Honda on a flooding road. So she did what she always did. She turned it into a game before the fear could pick a shape. "You know what I can't see out there?" she said. "Lights." "There aren't any," Noah said. "That's the game. First one to spot a light wins." "Wins what?" "Wins being right. Wins bragging." Amara lifted her head. "What kind of light?" "Any kind, a house light, a car, a star, if this rain ever quits. A porch. First one to see it calls it out. Loser has to admit the winner has better eyes." "I have the best eyes," Amara said, with total confidence. "Prove it." "Noah has glasses," Amara said, as if this settled the whole contest. "I have glasses for reading," Noah said. "Not for the dark. The dark is different." "Then I win the dark." "You have to see a light to win." "You can't just say you win." Chanel let them squabble. This was the machine working exactly the way she built it. A 5-year-old and a 7-year-old arguing about the rules of a made-up game could not, at the same time, be frightened children in a broken car on a flooding road. She had learned the trick young. When your own house is loud, you build a small, quiet room inside a game, and you get everybody into it, and you shut the door. Her grandmother had done it with card games at the kitchen table, while other things happened in other rooms. Chanel did it with a spotting contest. Same door, same room. Amara pulled up onto her knees and pressed her nose to the cold window, hands cupped around her face the way Chanel hadn't taught her, but she'd copied from somewhere. Noah went to the other side. And just like that, the 2 of them were hunting instead of hiding, breath fogging the glass, wiping it with mittened fists, narrating the darkness. "I see one. That's the ditch. That's just wet. Water isn't a light. It shined. Doesn't count." "There," Amara stabbed a finger at the glass. "Green. I saw green." "Where?" It went away. If it went away, it doesn't count, Noah said. It counts, I saw it. You have to see it, and it has to stay long enough for the judge to look. Chanel looked where the small finger pointed and found only wet dark in the swaying trees. But there was a flicker out there, low, the far red of a radio tower maybe, blinking behind the rain, or maybe nothing at all, maybe the kind of light a 5-year-old conjures because she wants to win. Either way, she gave it weight. 0.5 point, she ruled. It went away too fast for a whole point. But I believe you saw something. 0.5 point to Amara. 0.5 point isn't a real thing, Noah said. In this car it is. My car, my rules. Amara sat back, 1/2 point richer, and went straight back to hunting for the whole one that would seal it. That was the trick in Tyre. Keep the next point always one glance away. Chanel refereed from the middle. She wiped Amara's window when it fogged too thick, told Noah a reflection in a puddle didn't count unless it came from something, kept the rules just strict enough that the game couldn't be won by accident, and just loose enough that hope stayed on the table. Every minute they spent arguing about what qualified as a light was a minute neither of them spent thinking about how cold the car was getting or how the water in the ditch was louder than it had been. She checked the phone once more, shielding the glow with her body so it wouldn't wash out their night eyes. 6%. No bars now, not one. She typed a text to her sister anyway. Car dead Route 9 past the gas station. Kids okay, send someone. And hit send and watched it sit there with the little spinning wheel. Trying, failing, trying. She left it trying and put the phone away. A gust hit the side of the car and rocked it on its springs. The rain came harder for a stretch, loud enough that the kids stopped calling out and just watched, and Chanel took the pause to lean between the seats and press her ear near the door. The ditch was louder. She was sure of it now. When they'd stopped, she could hear it as a trickle somewhere off the shoulder. Now it had a body to it, a low, continuous rush, the sound of water that had somewhere to go and was going there fast. She thought about the flash flood band across the phone. She thought about the way this road sat low between the fields, how it dipped just past where they'd stalled, how she'd hydroplaned through that dip 100 times in spring. She made herself picture it cold. If the water came up over the road, it would come from the ditch side first, and it would come to the tires before it came to the doors, and she would have time, not much, but time, to get both kids out the high side and up onto the field. That was the plan under the plan. She filed it where she kept such things, and she did not let it show on her face. You're not playing, Noah said. He was watching her in the dark, the way he watched everything. I'm the judge. Judges don't play. That's convenient. She did laugh then, a real one, surprised out of her. Where did you learn convenient? You said it, about Dad. The laugh went quiet. She had said it. She'd said a lot of things about Marcus in the last 2 years that she hadn't meant for small ears, and every one of them was filed away somewhere behind those big, careful eyes, waiting to come back at exactly the wrong moment. Is Dad going to come? Noah asked. The question landed flat and direct, the way his questions always did. She thought about the honest answer, which was that Marcus was 2 hours and 1 unanswered call away, that the last address she had for him was a friend's couch, that he loved his kids in a way that ran real and deep and never once translated into showing up on a Tuesday. She thought about the kinder answer. She landed somewhere she could stand behind. Not tonight. He doesn't know we're out here. If he knew, he'd want to. That was true. She could give him that much and mean it. But we don't wait on people who don't know. We fix it ourselves and we tell them after. Right? Right, Noah said, not fully convinced, filing it with the rest. Eyes on the window, she said. You're going to lose to your sister. He turned back. Outside, the rain had shifted from a roar to a hard, steady patter, which she knew from a lifetime in this county could mean it was easing or could mean it was gathering itself for worse. The trees on the ditch side thrashed. A branch came down somewhere close with a crack that made all 3 of them jump, and then Amara laughed at herself for jumping, and Noah laughed at Amara, and the fear got spent as laughing the way she'd hoped it would. How long do we wait? Noah asked when the laughing settled. Until somebody comes. What if nobody comes? She had a rule for this, one she'd made for herself a long time ago in a different bad situation. and she gave it to him now like it was ordinary. Then we make it to morning, and in the morning we walk. It's warmer in the morning, and you can see the road. But nobody's going to make us walk. Somebody always comes. She believed about half of it. The half she believed she put in her voice, and she let him take the whole thing. Amara had gone still against the far door, her calling out slowing, her blinks getting long. The excitement of the game was burning down into sleep, which was fine, which was good. A sleeping child was a child not afraid. Chanel eased her down across the seat and unzipped her own cardigan and laid it over the small body even though it was damp, even though it left her own arms bare to the cold, because damp wool was warmer than nothing, and her daughter came before her comfort in every arithmetic she had ever done. Noah watched her do it. "You're cold," he said. "I'm from here. Cold doesn't count for people from here. That's not a real thing. It's the realest thing I know." She pulled him in against her other side, and he let her, which told her more about how scared he'd been than any word would have. He fit under her arm with his hood still up, the yellow of the raincoat gone gray in the dark. They sat. The water ran. She counted Amara's breaths without meaning to, and matched her own to them to slow herself down. The cold had stopped being a thing that happened to her arms, and become a thing that lived in her bones. Her wet clothes pulled the heat out of her steadily, and she could feel her thoughts starting to move slower, the way they do when the body decides warmth matters more than worry. She fought it by keeping her mind on tasks. Count the breaths. Feel the water at the door. Watch the road. Keep Noah talking just enough that he stayed awake as her second set of eyes, and not so much that he stayed scared. "Tell me the plan," she said, to give him a job. "Somebody comes, they take us home." He recited it. "If nobody comes, we wait for morning, then we walk, and it's warmer, and we can see." "And if the water comes up?" He hesitated. She had not told him this part, but he had watched her open the door and stand in it, and read the field, and he was his mother's son, and he'd drawn the line himself. "We go out your side. Up the hill. Feet off the floor first." Something turned over in her chest, half pride and half grief. 7 years old and already able to hold 2 exits in his head at once. She hadn't wanted that for him. She'd wanted him to be a boy who only had to know one way things went. But you raise the child you have, in the road you're stuck on, in the rain you get. "Good," she said. "That's exactly right. But it's not going to come to that." She thought about the center. She couldn't help it, with nothing to look at, and both kids quieting. She thought about the front room with the mismatched chairs and the reading corner she'd built out of 2 bookcases and a rug she'd bought with her own money, and the 20-odd kids who came through those doors every afternoon because their parents worked the same shifts she used to work, and there was nowhere else for them to be. She thought about the sign-in sheet and the snack cabinet she kept stocked out of a budget that didn't cover snacks. She thought about Mrs. Alvarez, who was 70 and volunteered because her own grandkids lived 3 states away, and about how she was going to have to be the one to tell Mrs. Alvarez that the room they both loved belonged to a company now, a company with a name that sounded like a color and a direction, and that in some office in the city, a person she would never meet had drawn a line through all of it to make a corridor of something toward somewhere. She had asked her sister the obvious question, back in the warm kitchen, before the cold set into all of it. Who buys a community center? The building wasn't worth much. The lot was a strip of cracked asphalt between a shuttered feed store and a self-storage place. There was no money in it, no view, no reason a company with a name like a Compass Reading would want it. Her sister had shrugged. Her sister worked doubles and did not have room in her head for the geometry of it. But Chanel did. Chanel had run pickup and drop-off on that block for 6 years, and she carried a map of it in her body, the way you carry the map of a house you grew up in. She knew which businesses had closed and which had quietly changed hands in the last year, and which trucks came at odd hours to the storage place. She didn't know yet what the map meant. She only knew that when you draw enough lines on a map, and they all bend the same way, they are bending toward something. She didn't have the shape of it yet. She only had the letter and the word sold, and the cold certainty that whatever this was, it was bigger than a building, and it had happened around her and above her without a single person asking her one question. A new sound cut under the rain, not the ditch, a sloshing, closer, right at the driver's side. She turned and put her palm flat to the door and felt the cold come through the metal, and low down near the sill, The cold had a different quality, a pressing weight to it. Water. At the door. She had to see. She couldn't plan against a thing she couldn't measure. I'm going to look outside for 1 second, she told Noah, low, so it wouldn't wake his sister. 1 second. You keep your hand on Amara. If I say get up on the seat, you get her up on the seat, feet off the floor. Can you do that? Why? Can you do that? Yes. She cracked the door and the rain came at her sideways and the cold hit her bare arms like a slap. She got 1 foot down and the water closed over her white sneaker to the ankle, moving, tugging at her heel toward the ditch. Not deep, not yet. Ankle deep and running, which meant the road was taking overflow off the shoulder, which meant the ditch had topped somewhere back the way they'd come. She stood in the open door with the rain flattening her hair to her skull and looked at the road behind them and the road ahead and the black field rising gently on the high side, and she measured the whole thing the way she measured a room full of kids. Where's the exit? How many can I move at once? How long do I have? The field. If it came up another 6 inches, they went out the passenger side and up into the field, and they stood in the rain, and they were cold and miserable and alive. She could carry Amara and hold Noah's hand. She could do it. She'd carried more up worse. She got back in and pulled the door shut against the wind and sat there dripping, breathing hard, her blouse gone translucent and stuck to her, water running off her chin onto her jeans. Her whole body had started to shake, the deep kind that comes from cold and not from fear, though the two felt identical from the inside. You're all wet, Noah whispered. I looked at the water. It's not coming in. We're okay where we are. You're shaking. That's just my body being dramatic. She wrung out the end of her hair between 2 fists. Ignore it. It's showing off. He almost smiled. She caught it in the dark and hung on to it. She checked Amara, still down, still holding the pendant, missed the whole thing, and she checked the water at the door once more with her palm and found it no higher than before. Holding. For now, everything was holding. But that was a tomorrow problem. Tomorrow she'd fight it, or she'd start to figure out how. Tonight, her job fit in 2 car seats, and it was breathing slow, and it was still, for now, unafraid. Amara's hand had found the little pendant at Chanel's throat in her sleep, the thin gold chain she never took off, and her fingers curled around it the way a baby's fingers curl around anything offered. Chanel let her hold it. Noah's voice came up small out of the dark. Mom, there's a light. Nice try. Go to sleep. No, there's really a light. Something in his tone was different from the game. She lifted her head off the seat back and followed his eyes to the rear window. Far off, at the end of the flat straight road behind them, low and blurred through the rain, a light had appeared. Then a second one beside it. 2 lights, close set and climbing, throwing long wet reflections down the road toward the car. Headlights, coming their way, slow, careful of the water, but coming. Chanel sat up. She wiped the fogged glass with the flat of her hand and looked, really looked, the way she'd told them to. The lights split the dark and did not turn off toward the gas station or the industrial park. They stayed on Route 9. They came on. See? Noah whispered. I win. She put her hand on the back of his head and kept her eyes on the 2 lights growing in the rain, and she did not tell him that her first feeling, watching help arrive on an empty road at night with both her children asleep against her, was not relief. It was the old, hard reflex she'd carried since she was younger than he was now. Figure out who this is before you let them close. You win, she said quietly. Stay down. Let me see who it is first. The lights kept coming. The lights did not turn toward the gas station. They slowed instead, drifting to the shoulder maybe 40 feet back, and stopped with the engine still running. Chanel counted the seconds by her own heartbeat. 1 car. No blue and red on top, no siren, just 2 beams cutting the rain into silver needles and holding steady on the back of her dead Honda. Noah pressed himself into the seat the way she'd taught him. She kept one hand flat on his shoulder. A door opened. She heard it over the rain because she was listening for it. A heavy sound, a good car, the kind of door that shut like a vault. Then a second one, 2 men, her fingers curled into Noah's jacket. Stay, she breathed. A flashlight swept the field first, then the ditch, then came up the side of the car in a slow line. Whoever held it knew what he was doing. He wasn't looking for a person. He was reading the ground, the water, the angle of the wheels sunk in the mud, the way you read a thing before you touch it. The beam stopped on her window and dropped at once, off her eyes, down to the door handle. A man who lowered his light so he wouldn't blind her. That told her more than his face would have. She rolled the window down 2 inches. Cold air and spray came through. "Car's dead," she said. "Flat. First." Before he could speak. "Battery. Maybe the starter. We're fine. You are in the low part of the road." His English was clean and careful, each word set down like a stone. "The water is coming up behind you. In the field it is already moving. I know where the water is." She had walked in it an hour ago. Her jeans were still cold with it. He crouched. That surprised her. A big man in a long dark coat lowering himself to her eye level so she wasn't looking up at him through the glass. Behind him, the second man stood square in the rain, hands loose at his sides, watching the road both ways. "There is a truck coming for us," the crouching man said. "It will not be quick. The road is bad in 3 places. My car is dry, your children can wait in it." "No." He didn't argue, he didn't move closer, he just looked at her, and then she caught it. His eyes went past her to the back seat, to Noah, sitting up now, watching him with that flat measuring stare the boy had learned from somewhere. To Amara, asleep, small under the camel cardigan, one fist wrapped around the gold pendant at Chanel's throat. Something in the man's face changed, not softened, settled, like a thing had been decided that he wasn't going to say out loud, because he had seen them from the road. That was the part he would think about later, and the part he did not tell her. From 40 feet back, before the flashlight, his headlights had found the car, and inside it, a woman in the dark with 2 kids, and she had been laughing, head tipped toward the back seat. One hand up, playing at something. A woman whose car was dead in a flood zone at night, teaching her children to laugh so they wouldn't feel the water rising. What convinced him wasn't the face the light showed him now, it was that. "How old is he?" the man said. A question, but soft. "Old enough to not need a stranger," Chanel said. The boy answered anyway. 7. "Noah?" he asked. The man's mouth moved, almost, not a smile. The rain ran off the shoulders of his coat in a steady sheet, and he stayed crouched in it like the weather was a thing that happened to other people. "My name is Yoon Tae-song," he said. "The plane I was flying in came down at the small airfield tonight, 4 miles that way. Not a crash, a hard landing. We walked to the car. We were driving to the town when we saw you." She filed it. A plane. A hard landing. This road, this night. She didn't believe in coincidence, and she didn't disbelieve it either. She just held it. "Okay," she said. "Yoon Tae-song, you've got a card? A license? Anything with your name on it that matches your mouth?" The second man shifted his weight. She saw it. A small thing. A flick of impatience or of warning. And Tae-song stopped it without turning around. Just lifted 2 fingers off his own knee, and the second man went still. "That too," she filed. "Men who obeyed a hand." Tae-song reached slowly into the inside of his coat. He did it slowly on purpose, watching her watch him, and drew out a slim black case. He opened it against the glass so she could see without him handing it through. A driver's license. A photo that matched. Yoon Tae-song. An address in a city 300 miles away. And behind the license, tucked in the case, the corner of something heavier, a metal card, matte black, no logo she recognized, just a name embossed and a line of Korean. "That's a lot of quiet for a businessman," she said. "I am a quiet man. That's not what I asked." He closed the case. "You asked who I am. I showed you. You did not ask what I do. That is a longer answer, and your daughter is asleep." Chanel almost laughed, caught it. The nerve of him, matching her, refusing to fill the silence she'd left open, handing it right back. The rain came harder. Down in the ditch, the water made a new sound, a low pull, and Noah's head turned toward it. He'd heard it too. He knew what it meant. She felt his shoulder go tight under her hand. Mom. Just that. She looked back at the field. In the reach of Taesong's headlights, she could see it now. The sheet of black water she'd waded into before, and it was wider than it had been. It had crossed something, a fence line maybe. It was moving toward the road with the slow patience of a thing that would win. The math changed. She hated that it changed. "The truck," she said. "How long?" "I do not know. 30 minutes. Maybe more." He looked at the water too. "The children should not wait for the truck. You do not have to trust me. You have to be somewhere higher than this. Higher is your car. Higher is my car." She turned around in the seat. Noah was already looking at her, and he had the face on, the one that broke her heart a little, the face that had decided to be calm because she needed him calm. "What do you think?" she asked him. Quiet. Just for them. He considered it the way he considered everything, too seriously for 7. "He put his light down," Noah said, "so it wouldn't hurt your eyes." "I saw that too." "And he's still getting rained on." "I saw that too, baby." Noah looked out at the water. "The ditch is louder." That was the vote. She knew her son. He didn't say yes to people. He noticed things and let the things add up, and the things had added up. "Amara stays in my arms," Chanel said, loud enough for the window now. "Noah walks on my other side, his hand in my belt. Nobody carries anybody. Your man walks in front where I can see him. You walk behind. If either of you gets between me and my kids, we're done, and I don't care about the water." Taesong stood. It took him a moment. His knee had stiffened in the cold, and she saw a flicker of it, a small tightness he swallowed. He turned his head and said one word to the other man, low, in Korean. The man nodded once and moved to the front, out into the beam of the headlights, and stood there in the rain like a marker. "His name is Lim Hyun-woo," Taesong said. "He does not talk. It is not rudeness. It is his nature." "Good," Chanel said. "I've got enough talkers." She woke Amara the gentle way, a hand on the cheek and her name close to the ear, so the child surfaced without fear. "Baby, we're going to a warm car. You hold on to me and you don't let go, okay? Like a koala." "Koala," Amara mumbled, and her arms came up around Chanel's neck, and the pendant slipped out of her fist and back against Chanel's collarbone where it belonged. Getting out was the hard part. Chanel pushed the driver's door against the wind, and the water reached in for her ankle at once, cold enough to steal her breath. She got a foot down, then the other. She turned and took Amara's weight full against her chest, the child's legs locking around her, and she felt the pull of the current even here, even at the edge. Not strong yet, but there, testing. Noah belt now. His small hand hooked into the back of her waistband. She felt it, and something in her unclenched a half-inch. Both of them tethered to her. That was the only arithmetic that had ever mattered. Hyun-woo led. He walked into the water first and stood in the deepest part of the crossing, planted, so that the three of them passed on the shallow side of his body. He'd made himself a wall against the current without being told to, and Chanel understood that this was a man who had stood between other people and worse things than water. She didn't thank him. She filed it. Taesong came behind, close enough to catch, far enough to obey her line. Once her foot rolled on a stone under the surface and she pitched, and she felt his hand come up, not grabbing, just there, an open palm hovering an inch from her shoulder blade, ready, and then gone again the second she found her balance. He never touched her. He'd heard the rule and he kept it exactly. The water was at her calf, then her ankle, then gone, and they were on the rising shoulder, and then on the crown of the road where it was only rain, and the car was there, long, black, its doors open and the warm yellow light of the cabin spilling out onto the wet asphalt. Amara went in first, then Noah, then Chanel, and she pulled them both against her on the wide back seat, and only then did she let herself shake. The heat hit her like a wall. Her teeth started going. She clamped them. Taesong got into the front passenger seat and turned so he could see the back without looming over it. Hyun-woo took the wheel. Neither of them looked at her too long. She noticed that. Men who knew how to not stare at a wet woman with her arms full of children. "There are blankets," Taesong said. He reached back, slowly, always slowly with her. She'd trained him in 10 minutes and he'd learned, and set 2 folded dark blankets on the seat beside her, not across her, letting her be the one to pick them up. The girl first. I know who's first, but she took the blanket and wrapped Amara, then Noah, and kept none for herself, and Taesong saw that too, and this time he did something about it. He shrugged out of the long black coat in the tight space of the front seat, wrestling with it, and passed it back folded so the wet outside faced in and the dry lining faced her. "You gave your coat to your daughter an hour ago," he said. "It is still on her. You are cold." She looked at him. She had not told him that. He had reasoned it. The child under a woman's cardigan, the woman in a thin blouse gone see-through with rain, the arithmetic of a mother. "You notice a lot," she said. "It is my work to notice." "And what work is that?" He held her eyes. The dome light was on, and she could see him properly now for the first time. The hard line of the jaw, the dark flat eyes that gave up nothing, the black hair pushed back, and running up the left side of his neck out of the collar, disappearing under his ear. The fine black lines of some inked creature, a tail and a coil of it, the rest hidden. She had known a few men with ink like that. It was never a hobby. "A longer answer," he said again. "Your daughter is asleep." Amara was, in fact, asleep, sagged into the blanket. But Noah wasn't. Noah was sitting up between them with his blanket around his shoulders, and his eyes going from his mother to the man and back, taking the measure of the room the way she'd taught him to do it in every new place. "Where are the doors? Who's in charge? Is Mom's voice tight or easy?" Chanel took the coat. It was heavy and warm from his body, and it smelled like cold rain and something under that, cedar and iron. She put it over her shoulders, because she was shaking too hard now to be proud about it. "Thank you," she said. She said it to the coat, not to him. It was as far as she'd go. "Where do you want to go?" Taesong asked. "There is a motel at the edge of the town. The truck can take your car in the morning, when the water is down. Or there is a hospital, if the children... They're not hurt. They're cold and they're scared, and they're tired." She pushed a wet strand of Amara's hair off her forehead. "The motel." He nodded to Hyun-woo. The car pulled off the shoulder, slow, the wipers going, the headlights finding the crown of the road and holding it. For a while nobody spoke. The heater ticked. Amara's breathing went deep and even. Noah's blinks got longer. Chanel watched the back of Hyun-woo's shaved head and the fine white scar through his eyebrow that she could see in the mirror, and she watched Taesong's hands, folded and still on his knee, the watch on his wrist, the dark steel of it. Still hands. Some men couldn't keep their hands still. These didn't move at all. "You didn't ask my name," she said. "You did not offer it. I thought you had a reason." She almost smiled. "Chanel. Chanel." He said it carefully, like he was setting it somewhere he wouldn't lose it. "And the boy is Noah. And the girl? Amara." He inclined his head, a small formal thing, like he was being introduced at a table and not sitting in a car full of wet strangers at midnight. It should have been ridiculous. It wasn't. Noah, on the edge of sleep, said the thing children say when their guard finally comes down. "Our car doesn't have a heater that works," he told the man, matter of fact, betraying her the way 7-year-olds betray you, with a fact. "Mom keeps a blanket in the trunk for winter, but it smells like the trunk." "Noah, it does." Taesong did not laugh, but the corner of his mouth moved again, that same near thing. "A car should keep you warm," he said to the boy, gravely, like it was a serious point of policy. "That is the whole purpose of the car." "That's what I said," Noah murmured, and then he was asleep, tipping into his mother's side, and the conversation was over because the audience was gone. Chanel sat in the warm dark with both her children heavy against her and a stranger's coat over her shoulders, and she did the thing she always did. She counted what she knew. She knew his name, and it matched a license. She knew a plane had come down tonight at the little airfield 4 miles east, the one nobody used, the one at the end of the access road that ran past the old depot, past the lot where the feed store used to be, past 3 buildings that had all quietly changed hands in the last year. She knew that the road they were on was the road to that airfield. She knew that a man who flew in private planes and traveled with a silent man in leather gloves and carried a black metal card with no logo was not in this county by accident, and that hard landings at unused airfields were not the kind of thing that happened to people like her. And she knew, this was the part that sat under her ribs and wouldn't move, that when he'd looked into the back seat and seen her laughing with her kids in a dead car, something in him had turned over. She'd watched it happen. She didn't know what it meant. She knew it meant something, and things that meant something to powerful men had a way of costing the people they landed on. You keep looking at me like you're doing sums, Taesong said, without turning around. I am doing sums. What is the answer? Don't have it yet. She adjusted the coat. You landed at the airfield past the old depot. That's a strange place to land a plane. A beat. The wipers swept. Something moved behind his eyes. She was watching for it, and she still almost missed it. A small recalibration. A man revising upward his estimate of the woman in the back seat. It is where they told the pilot to go, he said. When the weather turned, it was the nearest field long enough for the plane. Sure, Chanel said, the nearest field. You know the airfield. I know every road out here. I've driven kids up and down all of them for 6 years. She looked out the window at the black water sliding past in the ditch. There's a lot of empty buildings on the way to that airfield that didn't used to be empty. Feed store, the depot, corner of Mill and Ridge. All sold, all this year, she said it lightly. She said it like small talk. Funny how a road nobody uses got so many new owners. The car was very quiet. Ayunwoo's eyes came up to the mirror for half a second and dropped again. Taesong sat perfectly still in the way she was starting to understand was not calm but control, a stillness he put on the way other men clenched a fist. You should sleep, he said. It is 20 minutes to the town. I don't sleep in strange cars. No, he agreed. I would think not. The motel sign came up out of the rain, half its letters dead, a red glow smeared across the wet windshield. Hyunwoo turned in under the awning and stopped. Through the office window, Chanel could see a clerk asleep in the blue light of a television. I'll get one room, she said, already doing the money in her head. The money she didn't have, the toe that would eat what was left, the field trip Friday, the last paycheck 2 weeks out, and then nothing. Thank you for the ride. I mean it, but this is where you drop us. Taesong turned in his seat. Under the awning there was no rain between them for the first time, and he looked at her steadily, and he did not reach for his wallet, which she'd braced for, because she would have said no to that, with a heat that would have woken the kids. You are right to want us gone, he said. You do not know what we are. That is good sense, he paused. Hyunwoo will pay the clerk for the room, tonight only, because you are wet and it is midnight and your car is under water, and because it costs me nothing and will let me sleep. You may hate that, it is still true. In the morning we will be gone, and you will owe nothing, and you will not see us again. She held his gaze. She wanted to fight it. Pride wanted to fight it. But Amara was dead weight against her, and Noah's hand was still hooked in her belt in his sleep, and the water had taken the car, and the choice was a warm room tonight or a cold argument she'd win and regret. One night, she said, and I pay you back. I don't know when, but I pay it back. If it matters to you, he said, then yes, you pay it back. He said it like he already knew he would never take the money, and like he understood that letting her believe she'd repay it was the only way she'd accept the room at all. She saw the whole calculation move across his still face in a quarter second, and it unsettled her more than kindness would have, because kindness she knew how to refuse. This was something else. This was a man who had looked at her once through a rainy window and decided she was a thing worth being careful about. You won't see us again, she repeated, testing the words. That is what I said. She got the kids out under the awning, Amara boneless on her shoulder, Noah stumbling and half awake with his fist still in her belt. Hyunwoo went into the office and came out with a key on a diamond of orange plastic and put it in her free hand without a word, without meeting her eyes, and got back in the car. Taesong stood by the open passenger door a moment longer. The dragon on his neck showed dark against his skin in the red light of the sign. Chanel, he said, her name like he was returning it to her. The road you talked about, the empty buildings. A pause, and something crossed his face that she would spend the next 3 days trying to read. You should keep noticing things, but you should be careful who you say them to. Then he got in the car, and the door shut like a vault, and the long black shape of it pulled out from under the awning and was swallowed by the rain. Chanel stood there with her son's fist in her belt and her daughter's breath on her neck and the orange key biting into her palm, and she watched the taillights shrink and vanish, and she did not feel relief. She felt the water rising somewhere she couldn't see. The room was number 9, at the end, away from the road. She checked it before she brought them in, a habit older than the kids, older than Marcus. Behind the door, the bathroom, the window latch, the gap in the curtains, where a second exit would be if there had to be one. There didn't have to be one, but she looked. Then she brought them in and locked it, slid the chain, and put a chair under the handle. A chain was a suggestion, a chair was an argument. Amara went straight into the bed without waking. Chanel peeled off the wet boots and socks and tucked the blanket to her chin. Noah stood in the middle of the room, swaying, blinking at the ugly carpet. "Bathroom, teeth with your finger, then bed," she said. "We don't have toothbrushes. Finger, go." He went. She heard the water run. She sat on the edge of the bed and felt her own body for the first time in hours. The cold gone into the bone, the ache in her shoulders, the raw place on her palm where the key had pressed. Taesong's coat was still over her shoulders. She should have given it back. She hadn't. She told herself it was an accident and knew it wasn't. Quite. Noah came out and climbed in beside his sister, and she pulled the blanket over him, and he caught her wrist before she straightened. "Is he a bad guy?" Noah asked. "Not scared, just wanting the data." "I don't know yet," she said. "That's why we said one night. He was nice. Nice and safe aren't the same thing, baby." She smoothed his hair back. "Some people are nice because they want something. Some people are nice because that's who they are. It takes a while to tell which. So we stay careful, and we say thank you, and we don't owe anybody more than a thank you. Okay?" Noah considered it. "He gave you his coat." "He did. That's not a thank you thing. That's a bigger thing. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds. She kissed his forehead. Sleep. He was gone in a minute, both of them, the deep, instant sleep of exhausted children. Chanel turned off the lamp and sat in the dark with her back against the headboard and the coat still around her, and did not sleep. She turned it over. The plane at the empty airfield. The road that had grown new owners like a wound growing scar tissue. The black card with no logo. And the thing she couldn't set down. The last thing he'd said, under the red light, gentle as a warning and heavy as one. "You should be careful who you say them to." He hadn't said it like a threat. He'd said it like a man who knew exactly who the dangerous people were, because he was one of them, and he was telling her to watch her step in a country she'd been walking through blind. She'd spent the whole night reading him. She hadn't once considered that he might be reading her right back, cataloging what she'd seen, what she'd connected, how much a woman who drove these roads for 6 years might already know, without knowing she knew it. In the morning he would be gone. He'd said so. She believed him. She was wrong, and some part of her already suspected it, lying there in the dark with a stranger's coat pulled tight, and her children breathing beside her, and the rain finally beginning to ease against the window. The last thing she did before her eyes closed was reach up and check the pendant at her throat. Still there, warm from her own skin now. She held it, the way Amara held it, and let the tiredness take her, while outside the water kept climbing the road they'd come in on, covering the tracks of the long black car until, by morning, it would be as if it had never passed at all. The knock came at 8 in the morning, 3 soft raps, spaced too evenly to be a stranger's hand. Chanel was already dressed. She'd been up since 6, standing at the window with the curtain pulled back an inch, watching the parking lot dry. The rain had stopped near dawn. Now the sky was a flat white, and the road out front carried a thin brown film where the flood had drained back into the ditches. She looked through the peephole before she touched the chain. A woman stood outside. Middle-aged, county polo shirt, a lanyard, a clipboard held against her chest. Not him. Chanel let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "Miss Whitfield? The desk said you were in number 9. Your vehicle was flagged. It's down on Route 9, in the water." "I know. There's a recovery crew going out this morning. I need a signature so they can move it off the roadway." Chanel signed where the woman pointed. She did not ask how much. She already knew the number, and knowing it again out loud in front of a stranger would cost her something she couldn't spare before breakfast. The children were still asleep behind her. Amara had migrated in the night, one arm flung across Noah's chest, both of them tangled in the thin motel blanket. Chanel watched them for a moment through the gap in the door before she closed it and turned the deadbolt. The clipboard woman was already walking to her car. Chanel made the coffee that came in the paper packet, drank it black, and did the math that had kept her awake. The car was gone, not stolen gone. Worse. Water in the engine, water in the electrics, a title that wasn't worth the tow. 6 years of getting 3 people where they needed to be, finished in one night on a road she'd taken to save 20 minutes. She had $41 in her account. 2 more paychecks from the center, and then nothing, because the center was closing, because a company with a color and a direction in its name had bought the building out from under a room full of children. She set the paper cup down. That was the piece that wouldn't lie flat. She turned it in her mind the way she'd turned the black card in the dark, feeling its edges. By the time the children woke, she had a plan for the day, which was the only way she knew how to hold a day that had nothing in it. They walked. The motel sat at the edge of town, and town was 2 miles of shoulder and gravel, and Amara complained about her feet until Chanel put her up on her hip and carried her the last half mile the way she'd promised the girl she never would in front of strangers. There were no strangers now. Just the 3 of them, and a road that steamed as it dried. Noah walked ahead, kicking a bottle cap. He'd gone quiet in a way she recognized and didn't like. Not the sleepy quiet of a 7-year-old. The other kind. The kind that measured things. "You're thinking loud," she told him. "The man said we wouldn't see him again." "That's right. But you don't believe him." She shifted Amara higher on her hip. "I believe he meant it when he said it." Noah kicked the cap into the weeds. "That's not the same thing." She looked at the back of her son's head, at the curls that needed a cut, and felt the small cold drop of a mother, watching her child learn the exact lesson she'd hoped to teach him a few years later than this. "No," she said. "It's not." The community center was open because Chanel had a key, and because closing it early would have meant admitting it was closing at all, and she wasn't ready to hand the children that on a Tuesday. She let Noah and Amara into the reading corner she'd built with carpet squares and a shelf she'd sanded herself. She gave them the good markers. Then she sat at the front desk, in front of the ancient county computer, and she opened the property records, because she had nothing else to do with her hands, and because the thing that wouldn't lie flat had a shape now, and she wanted to see it. She started with the center. The deed had transferred 11 days ago. The buyer was a holding company. She wrote the name on a sticky note. Then she did the thing that only a woman who had driven every street of this town for 6 years, who knew which storefront used to be the fabric shop and which lot used to grow corn, would think to do. She looked up the depot, the old freight depot at the end of the access road, the one nobody used, the one 4 miles east of a small airfield where, she happened to know, a plane had made a hard landing 2 nights ago. It had sold in March, to a holding company, different name. She wrote it on a second sticky note. The feed store lot, sold in January. A third name, a third note. The gas station she'd passed on Route 9, the one that had changed its sign twice in a year, sold in November. 4th note. 4 companies. 4 names that shared no words. She lined the sticky notes up along the edge of the monitor and looked at them the way she looked at a room full of children when one of them was lying. They didn't match. That was the point. Somebody had gone to trouble to make sure they didn't match. Amara laughed from the reading corner. Chanel glanced up, made sure, looked back down. She kept reading. The county records were free if you knew where to click, and Chanel had helped enough parents apply for enough programs to know where to click. Each holding company had to file a registered agent, the person who received the legal mail, the address where the paperwork lived. She opened the first one. An address downtown. A suite number. She opened the second. Same address. Same suite number. Her finger stopped on the mouse. She opened the third. The same. The fourth. The same. 4 companies that shared no name, no owner she could see, no obvious thread, and every one of them received its mail at Suite 240 of the same gray building on Commerce Street, the accounting office with the gold letters she'd walked past 100 times on her way to the free clinic. She sat back. The chair creaked. For a moment she just breathed. She thought about Mrs. Alvarez, 70 years old, who came every Thursday to read to the little ones, and who would show up next month to a locked door. She thought about the snack cupboard she'd stocked out of her own pocket, the reading corner, the 6 years. All of it a parcel on somebody's map, a square and a line. She had been standing inside a piece of somebody's runway approach the whole time and calling it her job. 4 businesses along one dead road, a depot, a lot, a station, and now the center where she worked. She pulled up the county's road map. the one that showed the parcels, and she traced them with her finger, one to the next, and the line they made did not wander. It ran east, straight east, off the edge of town, past the last parcel, to the small strip of pavement where a plane had come down out of a storm 2 nights ago. A corridor. Somebody was buying a corridor. And the only reason she could see it was that she had driven it, taught in it, carried children across it, for 6 years, and she knew that a dead road doesn't get 4 new owners by accident. She took the 4 sticky notes off the monitor, folded them into a small square, and put them in the inside pocket of her bag, the one with the zipper. Then she wiped the search history, out of a caution she couldn't have explained, and shut the computer down. He came back that afternoon. She was outside, locking the center's side door, Amara's hand in hers and Noah on the step, when the long black car turned in off the street and stopped at the curb, the way a thing stops when it already knows where it's going. Chanel's first feeling was not fear. She noted that and filed it and distrusted it. The back door opened. Yoon Tae-sung stepped out. Gray turtleneck, black trousers, the leather jacket. No overcoat today because the overcoat was folded on the shelf inside the motel room, and they both knew it. The tattoo showed above the collar, the head of it beneath his ear. "You said morning," Chanel said. "You said you'd be gone." "The aircraft is being inspected." He stopped a careful distance away, the distance of a man who had learned the night before exactly how far back she needed him to stand. "The inspectors found something they want to look at twice. I'm told it will be days." "And that brings you here?" "No." He glanced at the building behind her, at the paper sign taped inside the glass door, the one that said the center's hours, the one that would say nothing at all in 2 weeks. "I came to return something." Hyun-woo came around the car. He carried a paper bag, folded at the top and set it on the hood, and stepped back. He wore the gloves. He said nothing, the way he said nothing. "It's dry clothes," Tae-sung said, "for the children." The girl lost her boots in the water. Amara's hand tightened in Chanel's. The child was looking at the bag with naked interest. Chanel did not move toward it. "We don't need it." "I know you don't need it." He said it without heat, a correction of the record. "You'd have found a way. You always find a way. That isn't the same as it costing you nothing." The words landed too close to the arithmetic she'd been doing all morning, and she hated that they did. "Why are you still here?" she said. Not a question. The same tool she'd used on him through the window in the rain. He looked at her for a moment. Then he did something she hadn't expected. He told her the truth. "Because I don't like the reason my plane came down," he said. "And I don't like that it came down here, of all the fields it could have found." The street was quiet. A car passed at the far end. Noah had come down off the step and stood close against her side now, and Chanel put her hand on his shoulder without looking away from the man. "Here," she repeated. "The pilot flew to the nearest field long enough to take the aircraft," Tae-sung said. "That is what I was told. That is a simple thing, the nearest field." He paused. "Except I've since learned it wasn't the nearest field. There were 2 closer. He was routed to that one." Chanel felt the 4 sticky notes in her bag like a weight. "You flew into a strip at the end of a road," she said slowly, "that 4 different companies spent the last year buying up, 1 parcel at a time. A depot, a lot, a station." She watched his face. "And this building, the place I work, sold 11 days ago to a company with a color and a direction in its name." Something changed in his eyes. Not surprise. Attention. The upward revision she'd seen in the car, sharper now. "You know this how," he said. "I drove that road for 6 years." She lifted her chin toward the east, toward the flat white sky over the fields. "I know which corner used to be the feed store. I know the man who ran the station before he sold it and moved to his daughters. I know the depot's been empty since before Noah was born." She let that sit. "You don't see a corridor unless you've walked every foot of it. You people bought a straight line to your own runway, and you dressed it up in 4 different names so nobody would stack them next to each other. You people," he said. "You landed a private plane the size of a house on a strip nobody uses, and a silent man with gloves carried my daughter across a flood." She held his gaze. "I don't have the whole shape, but I have enough of it to know I'm looking at something." For a long moment he was silent. Then, quietly, Do you know what the four companies have in common? She almost didn't answer. The sticky notes were hers. She had found them with her own hands, on a county computer, in a closing building, and part of her wanted to keep the one card she'd drawn. But he'd told her the truth about the plane, and she'd built a whole life on a policy of reading who a person was before she let them close, and she read, in the tired flat set of his mouth, a man who genuinely did not yet know the answer she was holding. That decided it. Not trust, information. She would rather he owed her a fact than the other way around. They file their mail to the same address, she said. All four. Different names, different dates, one suite number. Commerce Street. The accounting office with the gold letters, 2 blocks off the square. She watched him take it. Whoever built your corridor didn't hide it very well. He just hid it from people who'd never think to look at a mail forwarding record for a shut-down feed store. The name of the street did something to him. His jaw shifted, a muscle working once. He looked, for just a second, like a man who had heard a familiar footstep in a house he thought was empty. Say it again, he said. The address. Commerce. Suite 240. He turned his head and said one low word in Korean to Hyun-woo. The big man's face did not change, but he took his phone out, and his thumb moved, and he lifted it to his ear and walked 3 steps toward the car. You recognize it, Chanel said. I recognize the shape of it. Taesong looked back at her, and for the first time since the rain, there was something under the stillness, something that had teeth. You've done in one morning, with a public computer, what I would have paid a firm 2 weeks to do badly. I'm not for hire. I didn't offer. He almost smiled. It didn't reach anywhere. I'm telling you what you are. You're the only person within 300 miles who can put these pieces in a row, because you're the only one who carries the map in your feet. He glanced down at Noah, then at Amara, then back. That's a dangerous thing to be. For you, for them. Then maybe, Chanel said, you should get on your inspected plane and take your corridor somewhere else. I would. He said it simply, and she believed him, and that frightened her more than a threat would have. But the plane is being held, and the man who routed it here wanted it held. I don't yet know why. Until I do, I'm not leaving, and neither is the answer. Hyun-woo came back and murmured something. Whatever he said made the line of Taesong's shoulders settle a fraction, the way a man settles when a bad suspicion gets its first small confirmation. The suite, Taesong said to her, quiet now, almost to himself. It's leased through a management company. The management company answers to an office in Seoul. He stopped. An office I know. What office? He looked at her, and he chose. She saw him choose, not to say the name. Not today, he said. You've given me one true thing. I'll give you one back when I've earned the right to be sure of it. I don't hand people names I might have to take back. It was, she thought, the most honest thing anyone had said to her in weeks. Amara tugged her hand. Mama. Cold. The afternoon had turned, the white sky sinking toward gray, and the child's fingers were genuinely cold. And Chanel had a 2-mile walk back to a motel room she could afford for exactly one more night out of a stranger's charity she had sworn not to take twice. Taesong followed her glance down to the girl. Let Hyun-woo drive them to the room, he said. You in the front. Doors unlocked. You hold both children. He drives the speed you tell him, and stops when you say stop. He anticipated her, held up 2 fingers before she could speak, the same gesture she'd watched command a hard man in the flood. Not a favor. A cold 5-year-old and 2 miles. You'd do it for anyone's child. Do it for your own. She looked at the bag on the hood, at the gray sky, at Amara's cold hand. The clothes stay in the bag until I've looked at every piece, she said. Of course. And this is the last ride. That, he said, is not up to me. Or you. I think you already know that. She did know it. That was the trouble. Whatever this was, this corridor, this held plane, this office in a city across an ocean, it had a gravity now, and she was standing at the edge of it with a folded square of sticky notes in the zippered pocket of her bag, and she could feel the pull. She put Amara in the back seat and buckled her, and put Noah beside her, and sat in the front with her body turned so she could see both her children and the road at once, and told Hyun-woo, 25 miles an hour. You stop at every sign, full stop, and you take the long way, on the main road, where there are lights. He drove 25 miles an hour. He stopped at every sign. He took the long way. Taesong sat beside him, saying nothing, watching the town go by, the way a man watches a place he's beginning to understand he can't simply leave. At the motel, Chanel got the children out herself. She thanked the car, not the man, the way she had thanked the coat, and she stood under the sagging awning of number 9 with a paper bag she hadn't opened and watched the long black car pull back onto the road and turn, this time, not toward the highway out of town, but back toward the square, toward Commerce Street. He wasn't leaving. That night, after the children were asleep, after she'd checked the door and the window and set the chair under the handle, Chanel sat on the edge of the bed and opened the paper bag. Dry clothes, folded with a neatness that was almost aggressive. 2 sizes of everything, as if he hadn't known and had bought to be sure. Small rubber boots, purple, the exact shade Amara had lost in the ditch. She held them for a moment, and then she set them down, because a woman could get hurt by a pair of boots that guessed that well. At the bottom of the bag, under the clothes, there was an envelope. Not money, she could tell by the weight before she opened it, and she was glad, because money would have been an insult and he'd known that too. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once, and a phone. A cheap one, still in its plastic, the kind you buy with cash at a counter. The paper had one line, printed, no signature. If you see a car outside that isn't ours, don't go home. Call the only number in this phone. She read it twice. She thought about the 4 sticky notes, about a corridor that ran to a runway, about a man who'd told her the truth about his plane and then declined to hand her a name he wasn't sure of yet, about the way he'd said that's a dangerous thing to be, for you, for them, and hadn't dressed it up. She turned the cheap phone over in her hand. She did not turn it on. Outside, a car passed on the wet road and slowed, and Chanel was on her feet and at the window with the curtain pinched between 2 fingers before she'd decided to move. It was nothing. A pickup, it kept going, taillights shrinking, gone. But her heart was going hard, and Amara was stirring, and Noah was awake, she saw, lying still with his eyes open in the dark, watching his mother stand at a window with a phone in one hand she hadn't turned on. "Mom," he said quietly, "is it the car with the man in it?" "No, baby." She let the curtain fall. "Go back to sleep." He didn't. She could hear that he didn't. She came and sat on the edge of his bed and put her hand on his back, the way she had in the Honda 2 nights ago, in the dark, in the water, and she felt him let out a breath and not relax. "You said we'd resolve it and tell people after," Noah said into the pillow. "You always say that." "I do. So what are we resolving?" Chanel looked at the cheap phone in her hand, and the envelope on the bedspread, and the purple boots on the floor by the door, and the folded square of sticky notes she could feel through the fabric of the bag hanging on the chair, and she understood, with a clarity that had nothing kind in it, that she'd already stepped over an edge she'd meant to stay behind. That she was in something. That the only person who could see the whole shape of it was her, and the only person who wanted the same shape seen was a man with a dragon on his neck and an office he wouldn't name across the sea. "I don't know yet," she told her son, which was the truth, and the first truly frightening thing she'd said out loud since the engine died. "But I'm going to find out, and I'm going to do it before it finds us." Noah was quiet for a while. "Okay," he said finally, and closed his eyes. Chanel sat with her hand on his back until his breathing went long and even. Then she stood, and she carried the cheap phone to the little laminate table by the window, and she set it down where she could see it, and she sat in the chair, facing the door, and she did not sleep. She thought about Commerce Street, about gold letters 2 blocks off the square, on a building she'd walked past 100 times without ever once looking up at the 2nd floor. Suite 240. She could be standing outside it by 9 in the morning. She had a key to a closing building, and $41, and no car, and 2 children, and nothing left to lose that wasn't already sold out from under her. Somewhere across town, in a room she couldn't picture, a man was looking at the same address on a different screen and feeling the same cold recognition run down the same wire. Chanel folded her hands on the table and watched the door and waited for morning, and for the first time in 6 years of resolving things quietly and telling people after, she was not sure, at all, that this was a thing she could resolve alone. Chanel was at the Commerce Street building by 9, the 4 sticky notes still folded in the zippered pocket of her bag. The children left with Mrs. Alvarez at the center. For 2 hours she had begged out of a woman who worked for free. She had walked the long way. She had counted the cars on the block twice. None of them were the black one, and none of them were a pickup, and that was the only thing that had let her cross the street. The building was gray, 4 floors, glass doors that needed cleaning. A directory in the lobby listed the tenants in white plastic letters. She ran her finger down the column without touching it. Suite 240, Meridian Financial Services, 2nd floor. Not an accounting firm with gold letters on the window. A financial services company. She had gotten that part wrong from the sidewalk. She had gotten the important part right. She took the stairs. Stairs let you hear who is behind you. The 2nd floor hallway smelled like new carpet. Suite 240 had a frosted glass door and no receptionist visible through it. Only a shape moving somewhere deep in the room. She stood to the side of the door, the way she stood to the side of every door, and she read the small print on the plaque beside it. Meridian Financial Services, and below that, smaller, a line she had not expected. Managed accounts held on behalf of East Meridian Holdings LLC. She read it twice. East Meridian, a color and a direction. The holding that had bought the center 11 days ago. The one whose letter reached the board 2 days before it reached her. The one she had described to her sister in the kitchen as a name like a color and a direction, before she had ever seen a black car on Route 9. The center was not a 5th parcel next to the corridor. The center was the same hand. She did not go in. She backed to the stairwell, took the 4 sticky notes out of the zippered pocket, and on the blank yellow of the last one, she wrote the words East Meridian, 2nd floor, with a pen that skipped. Then she went back down the stairs, faster than she came up, and she was on the sidewalk before she let herself finish the thought. The man who had put his coat around her had bought the roof over her children's after-school hours. Maybe not with his hand, but his hand knew the name. She walked to the center without seeing the blocks. Mrs. Alvarez had the children at the reading corner, Amara building something out of the wooden blocks that were technically already the property of East Meridian Holdings LLC, and Chanel stood in the doorway of a room she had stocked from her own pocket and felt the floor she was standing on belonged to someone else's map. She got the children their coats. She thanked Mrs. Alvarez. She did not say why her hands were not working right. The black car was on the street when she came out. It had not been there when she went in. It was parked across from the center, engine off, and Hyun-woo was standing beside the rear door with his hands folded and his eyes on the middle distance. And Taesong was not visible, which meant he was inside the car, which meant he had come for her. She stopped on the top step with a child's hand in each of hers. "Go back in," she said to Noah. "Reading corner. Watch your sister. I'll be right there, in the window. You'll see me the whole time." Noah looked at the car, then at her, then took Amara's hand and went back through the door without a word, and she watched him do the thing he was too young to do so well, and she hated the car a little more for it. She crossed the street alone. Hyun-woo opened the rear door before she reached it. She stopped an arm's length from the car and did not get in. "Come out," she said. "I'm not sitting in a car to have this." There was a pause inside. Then the far door opened and Taesong came around the trunk on foot, gray sweater, the jacket, and he stopped where she could see all of him, and the sun was on him, and she could see his face read her in the first second and revise something. "You went to Commerce Street," he said. Not a question. "You had someone watching the street." "I had someone watching you," he said, and he said it plainly, without softening it. And she understood that he had decided honesty was cheaper than the alternative, and she filed that too. "Say the name of the company that owns your buildings," she said. He was quiet. "You told me you didn't hand over names you might have to take back." Her voice was level, and it cost her. "I'm not asking for the man in Seoul. I'm asking for the name over your own head. Say it." "There are several," he said. "Say East Meridian." She watched it land. It landed in the jaw first, a small setting, and then in the eyes, and what she saw there was not a man caught. It was a man doing arithmetic she had done an hour before and arriving somewhere she had already been. He had not known the center's buyer by name. He was learning it from her mouth. "That is one of mine," he said slowly. "East Meridian, is a holding under a fund I control. It buys and it holds. I do not choose the parcels. It buys what it is told to buy. It was told to buy the community center. Her voice did not rise. That was the thing she would be proud of later, that it did not rise. The one I run, the one my kids sit in. 11 days ago, your company shut down the only warm room those children have after 3 o'clock, and you sat in a car 2 nights ago and told me I was the only person who could see the corridor, and you let me draw you a map to your own front door, and you said nothing. I did not know, he said. You keep saying that. Because it is true. He took a step, and she took a step back, and he stopped, and the not touching that had started on a flooded road held. Chanel, listen to what you just told me. You told me my own company bought a building I never chose in a town I landed in by accident. You think I feel caught. I feel used. The words sat between them on the pavement. She had come across the street to break it. To say the things she had rehearsed on the stairs, that gentle and safe are not the same, that she had let a man with a tattoo put a coat on her and a phone in her hand, and she had been paying for the privilege and trust, that whatever this was, it ended on this sidewalk, in the sun, in front of the window where her son was watching. She had the sentence ready, and she looked at his face and the sentence did not fit the face. Prove it, she said instead. Prove that I didn't know my own company shut your center. Prove that you're used and not using. You've got until my kids get hungry. He looked at the window. Noah was in it, a small shape behind the glass, exactly where she had said he would be. Something in Taesong's shoulders changed at the sight of the boy in the window, and she saw it. And she did not know yet what to do with the fact that it moved him. Get Hyunwoo, he said, to no one, and Hyunwoo was already moving. They did not go anywhere. That was the first thing that told her he was not managing her. A man managing her would have taken her somewhere, a quieter street, a room with one door. Instead, he had Hyunwoo bring a flat black folder from the front seat, and he opened it on the hood of the car in the daylight, in the open, where the window could see. 2 days ago, the inspectors held my aircraft, he said. You know this. I told you they found something to look at twice. I did not tell you what, because I did not have it in a form I trusted. I have it now. Hyunwoo brought it up from the field this morning. That is why we are on your street. He turned the folder so it faced her. She did not read paper the way she read cars, but she read enough. Maintenance logs, columns of dates and initials and torque figures she could not parse. And down the right margin, a second set of pages clipped behind the first, the same columns, different numbers. The aircraft carried a fuel pressure fault, he said, small. The kind a crew logs and clears at the next major service. On the record the crew signed, it was logged and cleared 3 weeks ago in Seoul. Signed off. Green. He put one finger on the clipped pages behind. This is the shop's own copy, the maintenance provider. Their copy says the part was ordered and never installed. The sign-off in Seoul is on a form that was filled in after the fault was already flying. She looked at the 2 sets of numbers. Someone signed that it was fixed, she said, and it wasn't. Someone signed that it was fixed, and it was not, and they knew the route. He kept his finger where it was. The night we landed, the pressure dropped in weather. A pilot with a fault in a storm does not gamble. He is trained to put down at the nearest field long enough for the aircraft. I told you there were 2 fields closer than the one we used. I did not understand that until now. The nearest fields were marked unavailable in the flight package the crew was given. Closed for works. They were not closed. Chanel's mouth was dry. You're telling me someone made your plane sick, she said slowly, and then told your pilot the only place to land was the one at the end of my road. I am telling you the fault was real. The emergency was real, and the choices around it were arranged so that a real emergency would end in exactly one place. He closed the folder halfway, then stopped, as if closing it was a lie he did not want to tell. A pilot who runs low on options lands where the map lets him land. Someone drew the map. To kill you, she said. No, he said it fast, and then he said it again, slower, like he was testing whether he believed it. If they wanted the aircraft down hard, they would have let the fault run past the field. They gave the crew a field. A short one, an old one, but a field long enough. The fault was set to force a landing. Not a crash, a landing. He looked at her. Somebody wanted my plane on the ground at the end of that road, alive, waiting, for days. She thought about the inspectors, the aircraft held, days on the ground in a town where his own company was quietly buying every parcel between the field and the airport. How long were you supposed to be stuck here? She asked. As long as it took, he said, for something at the airport to be ready. That is the part I do not have yet. The corridor you found runs east to the regional airport, not to my little field. My little field is where they parked me. The airport is where the thing happens. He looked at the folder. You gave me the accountant's address. It gave me the fund. The fund gave me East Meridian. And East Meridian's instructions do not come from me. So, he did not finish it. So, someone inside your own house, she said, sat you down at the end of my road and is building something at the airport with your money and your name on it and made your plane sick to do it. The street was very quiet. A car went by and neither of them looked at it. Hyun-woo looked at it. Hyun-woo looked at everything. That is what the paper says, Taesong said. Then say the name in Seoul. No. And this time, the no was not a wall. It was something worse, something careful. A man protecting a wound he had not looked at yet. Because if I say it out loud on your street and I am wrong, I have named a man I have known for 20 years, and I do not get that back. And if I am right, he stopped. His hand was flat on the folder. If I am right, then I need him to keep thinking I am a fool stuck at a field, playing house with a woman and her children, while I take his map apart from underneath. If I say the name now, I lose that. I lose the only advantage the accident handed me, which is that he thinks the accident worked. She understood it. She hated that she understood it. You want to keep looking like the fool, she said. I want him to keep thinking the emergency did exactly what he built it to do. His eyes went to the window again, to the boy in it, which was to strand me somewhere I would sit still and be watched. He does not know the field had a broken-down Honda 4 miles west of it. He does not know I saw a woman laughing with her children in a flood. He built me a cage and did not know there was a person in it with the one thing he could not buy, which is the map in her feet. Don't, she said it sharp. Don't make me the good luck in your war. I have 2 kids and $40 and no car, and in 2 weeks no job, and the reason I have no job is a company with your name behind it. You don't get to make that a gift. He went still, not the trained stillness, a real one. You're right, he said. It was not what she expected. She had braced for the smooth answer, the reframe, the way powerful men turned every accusation into a compliment. He just said she was right and let it be true on the pavement between them. The company took your room, he said. I will not tell you it was not me. My money signed the check. That is mine to carry whether I chose the parcel or not. He paused. I cannot give you back 11 days. I can tell you the truth in the order I learn it, which is more than I have given anyone in 20 years, and I am aware that is worth nothing to a woman deciding whether to walk back into that building and never open this door again. She looked at the folder. 2 sets of numbers. A fault that was real and a fix that was a lie. The plane, she said. You could have kept that from me. I'd never have known. You showed me a doctored logbook that says a man you trust tried to strand you. Why? Because you showed me a company I own, doing a thing I did not order, he said. You put your card on the table. I am putting mine. You can count them and decide if we are playing the same hand or 2 different ones. Across the street, in the window, Noah lifted a hand. Not a wave. A check. Are you all right? She lifted 2 fingers back, low, the way Taesong stopped Hyun-woo with 2 fingers, and only realized after she had done it whose gesture it was. Here is what I know, she said, and she said it because giving the fact was easier than deciding to trust the man, and she had learned that from him. East Meridian didn't just buy the center. Whoever's running your fund is buying rooms full of people. The center's got 140 kids on the after-school list. The depot's got a night crew. The feed store lot backs onto the trailers on Ridge. You want a quiet corridor to the airport? You don't buy empty ground. You buy the ground and then you empty it. The center closing isn't a side effect. It's step 1 of emptying a mile of road. She watched him take that in the way she had watched him take the address. He was fast. She would give him that. He had the whole shape of it in the time it took most people to find the first corner. You are saying the closures are the operation, he said, not the cover for it. I'm saying somebody's clearing a mile of witnesses and calling it real estate. And they started with the room where the witnesses are children, because who fights for a rec center? Her voice finally moved, once, and she pulled it back. I fight for the rec center. That's the accident he didn't plan for either. For a moment, neither of them said anything. A truck downshifted somewhere near the square. Hyunwoo's head turned toward it and turned back. I have to get my kids fed, Chanel said. That part's real too. Taesong closed the folder. He handed it to Hyunwoo without looking at him, and Hyunwoo took it, and it disappeared into the front seat. I am not going to ask you to trust me, Taesong said. You would be a fool to, and you are not one. I am going to ask you for a week. You keep the phone. You keep your rules. You do not get in a car you do not choose. And you tell me, in facts, what the map does next, and I tell you, in facts, what the paper does next, and at the end of the week we both know more than we know now, and if at any point the arithmetic tells you to close this door, you close it, and Hyunwoo will still make sure a car that is not ours never gets near your children. That last part is not a bargain. That one you get for free, because my company took your room. She should have said no. The sensible version of her, the one who checked exits and put a chair under the knob, wanted to say no and take her children and walk into a building that no longer belonged to her and wait out 2 more paychecks and disappear. But she had stood on the stairs at Commerce Street an hour ago and read a name that tied the man in the black car to the room where her son learned to read, and she had understood something she did not like. She could not unsee the corridor. She was already in it. She had been in it since the night her car died. Walking away from the door did not walk her out of the map. It only left her in it alone. A week, she said. Facts for facts. And the first fact you owe me is this. The man in Seoul. You don't have to say his name to me, but you have to have said it to yourself, out loud, once, before the week's over, because you're about to take apart something a friend built, and if you go into it still calling him a maybe, he'll be gone before you're sure, and my kids will still be standing in the corridor. Taesong looked at her for a long moment. That is the hardest thing anyone has asked me in 20 years, he said. Then it's probably the right thing. He almost smiled. It did not reach anything. Go feed your children, he said. The car will not follow you. Hyunwoo will be on this street until dark, and you will not see him, and that is the last time I will do a single thing near your family without telling you first. If it happens again, you have my word to hold, and you strike me with it. She stepped back from the car. Then she stopped. The plane, she said. You could have died. Fault in a storm, old field, short runway. Force a landing isn't the same as survive one. Whoever built this bet your pilot was good enough to walk you out of it. Yes, he said. So they didn't want you dead, they wanted you stuck. She held his eyes. That means they need you alive for whatever's at the airport. Your name alive, your signature alive. She let it sit. You're not the target of the thing at the airport. You're the thing that makes it legal. She watched that one go all the way down. It went deeper than the folder had. Because the folder said someone had tried to strand him, and stranding was an insult, and a man could survive an insult with his pride. But this was worse. This said someone had spent 20 years of trust to turn him into a signature, a face on a crime he would author without knowing, and that the whole elaborate accident, the fault and the false field and the days on the ground, existed for one purpose, to put Yoon Taesong somewhere he could be made to look like the man who did it. I had not put it in those words, he said quietly. I know, she said. You've been reading it as an attack. It's not an attack, it's a frame. She shifted her bag on her shoulder. I've been framed before, smaller. A register that came up short at a job I needed. You learn to smell it. The person who does it to you is always someone who already had your keys. Hyunwoo went still at the front of the car. Not much. A man who did not move much, moving less. Taesong stood on the sunlit pavement with a folder full of 2 truths in the seat behind him, and a woman in front of him who had just handed him the shape of his own destruction in language he could not unhear, and for the first time since a storm put his aircraft on the ground, he looked like a man who was afraid. Go, he said. Please. She went. She crossed the street with the sun on her back, and she did not look at the car, and she went up the steps of a building that belonged to his company, and she gathered her children off the floor of a room that was already sold, and through the glass she saw the black car pull away from the curb. Slow, legal, and turn not toward the highway and not toward Commerce Street, but east, toward the airport, and she stood in the window with a child on each side and watched it go, and understood that the week had already started, and that she had said yes to it, and that the man driving away had just learned he was not the hunter in his own story. She fed Amara crackers from the machine because the machine still took quarters even if the room was sold. She sat Noah at the little table, and she watched the door, and she took out the phone he had given her, the cheap prepaid one with the single number, and she turned it on for the first time. It lit. One contact. No name, just a number. She did not call it. She held it in her hand and she looked at her son, who was watching her turn on a phone from a man he had asked twice if he was a criminal, and she made herself say the true thing because she had promised herself she would never manage her own children the way powerful men managed her. "Baby," she said. "The man with the coat. His company is the one that closed our center." Noah put down his cracker. "So he is a bad guy," he said. "I don't know yet." She turned the phone over in her hand. "But somebody made him look like one on purpose, and now he knows it, and he's scared. And a scared, powerful man is the most dangerous thing there is, or the most useful, and I haven't figured out which." Noah thought about it with the seriousness he brought to everything now. Too much of it, more than a 7-year-old should have to carry. "Is that why you turned the phone on?" he said. She looked at the single number on the little cracked screen. "I turned it on," she said, "so that if a car that isn't his comes for us, I can call the one that is." That's not the same as trusting him. That's just knowing which door to run to. She put the phone in the zippered pocket, next to the 4 sticky notes and the 5th one that now said East Meridian, 2nd floor. "Eat your cracker. We've got a long walk and we're doing it before dark." Outside, somewhere on the street she could not see, a man in black gloves stood watch over a family that was not his, over a corridor his own house had built, and to the east, a small aircraft sat held on an old field, while its owner drove toward an airport to learn what his name was about to be used to sign. The week had 1 day in it already. Chanel took her children's hands and walked them out into the light, counting the cars. The second car was parked where a car should not have been. Chanel saw it on the 3rd morning of the week, from the motel window, before the sky had finished going gray. A sedan, dark, 1 street over, nose pointed at the row of doors. Not the black car, not the pickup she'd learned to dismiss. Something new, and patient, and wrong in the way patient things are wrong when they have no reason to sit that still for that long. She counted to 60. It stayed. She did not reach for the prepaid phone. She reached for Noah's shoulder instead. 2 fingers, the signal that meant, "Get the shoes," and he was awake before she finished the touch. He didn't ask. He'd stopped asking that week, and she had noticed, and she had told herself she would fix it later, when there was a later. "Amara stays sleeping," she said. "You and me look." They looked from the bathroom window, which gave a slant angle across the lot to the street. The sedan's engine wasn't running. No exhaust in the cold. Whoever sat in it had been sitting long enough to let the heat go, or had never wanted the heat, had wanted only the doors and the patience. "Is it the man's car?" Noah said, flat. "Not the man, the man's." "No." "Then whose?" She didn't have the answer, and she hated not having it, and the hate was an old hate, the one that lived under all the newer ones. She knew this shape. She had spent 6 years dropping children at doors and reading the cars parked wrong outside them, and a car parked wrong outside a woman's door was almost never a stranger's car. It was almost always someone who thought they were owed a look. "Get back from the glass," she said. By 7, the sedan was gone. By 7:30, she had walked the lot in her work clothes, the navy blazer, the badge she still wore, though the senator had 11 days of life left in it, and she had found what she was looking for, pressed into the gravel where the sedan had sat. 2 cigarette ends, filtered, the same brand, ground out by the same shoe. Someone had waited long enough to smoke twice. She put one in the zippered pocket, next to the sticky notes, because she had learned that week to keep the small hard proofs. Then she did the thing she had told herself she would not do until she was sure. She called the number. He answered on the first ring, which told her he'd had the phone in his hand, which told her something she filed and did not examine. There was a car, she said. Not yours. It watched the door for an hour, and it left when the sun came up and the man who sat in it smokes. A pause. The pause was too short. Describe it, Taesong said. You already know what it looks like. She heard herself say it and knew, in the saying, that it was true. You put it there. The silence on the line was the silence of a man deciding how much of a thing to hand over. She had watched him do it in daylight, at the hood of his car, and she could hear the same motion now with no face to read. Not that car, he said finally, but a car. Yes. She sat down on the edge of the bed. Amara had rolled into the warm dent Chanel had left, thumb near her mouth, the gold pendant tangled once around her small fingers where it always ended up. Noah stood by the bathroom door, watching his mother's face for the weather. You said, Chanel started, and stopped, and started at a different place, because the first place was too close to the center of her. You stood in the street, and you told me you'd never do anything near my children again without saying it first. 3 days. It took you 3 days to break it. I did not break it. Hyun-woo watches the street, openly. I told you that. This is a breath. There is a second watch. It is not mine. You just told me it was yours. I told you a car was mine. I did not say which car did what. And there it was, the thing she'd read in him from the first night. The man who could tell you nothing but the truth, and still leave you standing in a field with no idea where you were. The car you saw this morning is not one of mine. Mine keep their distance and do not smoke and do not let their heat die. Someone else is watching your door now, and they let you see them. She understood then why the pause had been too short. He'd been afraid of this. He'd been waiting by the phone for exactly this call. How long have you had someone on us, she said. Your own, the kind that keeps its distance. He didn't answer. How long? Since the motel, he said. The first night. She closed her eyes. Every night in the numbered room, every time she'd checked the door and set the chair under the handle and told herself she'd done the checking, someone outside had been checking her. Every walk to the center, Amara on her hip, Noah's hand on the strap of her bag, measured, written down maybe, filed the way she filed things, by a man who filed better than she did and had more people to do it. I did it to keep you alive, he said, and his voice did the thing it never did. It reached. There are people who would use you against me. You are the one person in 300 miles who can read the map. That makes you worth taking. I put eyes on you so that if someone tried, I would know before it finished. You put eyes on my children, she said, and you didn't tell me. You decided my family was something you got to watch. Chanel. That's the thing my whole life has been about not letting happen. Her voice did not rise. It went the other way, went flat and level and terrible. The voice she used when a thing had gone all the way through her and come out the other side. A man with money and men, deciding my babies are safer under his eye than under mine. Deciding it quietly, deciding it kindly. You think because you did it gentle it isn't the same shape. It is exactly the shape. The line held nothing but his breathing. Your father, she said, and she had no right to it. She'd guessed it from a card with no logo and men who obeyed a hand, but she was past the edge of right. Was he a gentle one too? The breathing stopped. Don't, he said. Quiet. A door closing on a room she'd walked toward without meaning to. I have to go to work, she said. I have 11 days of work left. Don't send a car. She hung up. Noah was still watching her. You yelled at him, he said. She hadn't yelled. She'd done worse. She'd gone cold, and Noah had learned the difference that week. Learned it younger than a boy should. You said don't send a car. How do we get to the center? We walk. It's far for Amara. Then I carry her far. She was already moving, already folding the small hard proofs deeper into the bag, already building the plan the way she built every plan, out of what she had, and not out of what she wished she had. Shoes. Both of you. Now. They walked. The center had a smell she'd stopped noticing years ago, and noticed now the way you notice things you're about to lose. Glue and floor wax and the orange dust of the snack crackers she stalked from her own pocket. Mrs. Alvarez was at the front table folding permission slips no trip would ever use, 70 years old and steady. And she looked up at Chanel's face and knew something without being told, the way old women who have watched a lot of doors always know. There was a man, Mrs. Alvarez said, yesterday, asking hours, asking whose children stay latest. Chanel set Amara down at the reading corner, the corner she'd built, the rug she'd carried in from her own car, back when she had a car. What did you tell him? That I don't give a stranger a child's schedule. Mrs. Alvarez's chin went up half an inch. He had a nice coat. Nice coats have been buying this whole block. Did he smoke? On the step, too. Same shoe, Chanel thought. Same patience. Not Taesong's kind, the kind that keeps its distance. The other kind, the kind that lets you see it, because the seeing is the point. She got the children settled, and she went to the county computer one more time, though there was almost nothing left to find, and she was 3 searches in when the front door opened and her whole body turned before her mind did, and it was not a man in a nice coat. It was Marcus. He stood in the doorway of the center in his khaki bomber jacket, the black cap, the work boots, his beard fuller than the last time, his eyes tired the way they were always tired now, and for a second, the 2 years since he'd last stood in a doorway of hers folded down to nothing. Nell, he said. Only he called her that. I've been calling your phone. My phone's dead. Has been. True. The real one, drowned in the Honda, was a brick in a landfill. She didn't explain the other one, the prepaid one, the single number. Amara saw him and made the sound children make, the pure one, and ran, and he caught her and lifted her, and the Marias Chiquinas swung and something in Chanel's chest hurt in a way she didn't have room for today. Noah did not run. Noah stood at the reading corner and watched his father the way he'd learned that week to watch everything, measuring, and Marcus felt it, and set Amara down slower than he wanted to. Hey man, Marcus said to him. Hey, Noah said. I heard the centers closing. Marcus turned back to Chanel, and his voice dropped, and the thing that came into it was the thing she'd been dreading since he walked in. Not anger, worse. Concern. The concern of a man who has decided he sees the situation clearly. I heard about the car, the one on Route 9, in the water, with them in it. Your sofa surfing friend told you that, she said. Doesn't matter who told me. They were in a car in a flood, Nell, in the water. And now you're in a motel and you've got no car and no job in 2 weeks and I'm hearing... He stopped. Chose the word. I'm hearing there's men around. Nice coats. Around my kids. Your kids. Our kids. He held his hands up, the old gesture, the one that used to work. I'm not here to fight. I'm here because I heard my children almost drowned and their mother's living in a motel and there's men watching the door, and I'm their father, and I get to ask if they're safe. And the terrible thing, the thing that put the taste of metal in her mouth, was that it was a fair question. It was the exact question she'd been asking herself since the sedan didn't leave. Marcus had been gone 2 years, been a sofa and a phone number and a birthday he sometimes remembered, and he'd walked in and put his hand on the one crack that was already splitting. They're safe, she said, because I keep them safe. Same as the last 2 years you weren't counting. That's not. He looked at Noah, lowered his voice further, which did nothing, because Noah heard everything now. If you can't keep them, if it's gotten to where there's men watching, maybe they come stay with me a while. My mom's got the room. It's stable. It's not a motel. The reading corner had gone very quiet. Amara had stopped moving. And Noah put down the book he wasn't reading, and he walked past both of them, past his father's tired eyes and his mother's cold face, and he sat down against the far wall, with his knees up and his arms around them, and he put his forehead down, and he did not come back out. Chanel knew that shape too. She'd made that shape herself, at his age, in rooms where grown people decided things over her head about where she'd sleep. Look what you did, she said to Marcus, low. Look what I did. He laughed. No humor in it. I walked in the door. That's what I did. He's been like that before I got here, Nell. Look at him. That's not 5 minutes of me. That's weeks of something. What's going on? What's actually going on? She opened her mouth to build the plan out of what she had, the way she always did, and what she had was almost nothing she could say out loud. A corridor of closed businesses running east to a runway. A holding company with her boss's name on the closure and a mafia's money underneath. A plane forced down on purpose. A man with a dragon on his neck who watched her door to keep her alive and called it kindness. A second man, in a nice coat, who watched her door to be seen, and she did not yet know why the being seen was the point. "I lost the job," she said instead, "because it was the only true thing small enough to fit in the room. It's official as of this morning. They moved the date up. The center closes Friday, not in 2 weeks. I got the email while we walked here." She hadn't told anyone. She'd read it on the phone at a crosswalk with Amara's weight on her hip and folded it away and kept walking, because there'd been nothing to do with it but keep walking. Marcus's face changed. Friday. Friday. So no job, no car, a motel, and men. He said it gently and it landed like the opposite. "Nell, come on. Let me take them for a couple weeks. Just till you land somewhere. That's not me taking them. That's me helping." And she wanted to say no, the way she'd said no through the motel window on the first night, clean and complete. The word its own wall. But the wall had a crack in it now that she hadn't put there, and the crack had a boy folded against a wall inside it, and for one full second, 1 second she would hate for a long time, she did not know if she was keeping her children safe, or keeping them because keeping them was the only thing she had left that was hers. The second passed. She did not let it show, but it had happened, and the fact that it had happened frightened her more than the sedan. "No," she said, "but thank you for asking like it was a question." Marcus looked at her a long moment. Then he crouched down by the far wall, near Noah, not touching, the way you approach an animal that's decided about you. "Hey," he said. "Hey, bud, I didn't mean to make it worse. Whatever's going on, you've got a dad, that's all I came to say." Noah didn't lift his head, but his voice came out muffled against his knees, and it was the most he'd said in days, and it went into Chanel like a blade because it wasn't for his father. "There's a man who gave us coats," Noah said, "and a man who watches, and now you. Everybody wants to watch us, and nobody tells us what we did." Marcus looked up at Chanel, and for once there was no argument in his face, only the plain fear of a man who's just heard his son say a true thing. She got them out of there before it broke worse. Told Marcus she'd call. With what phone, he asked, and she said she'd figure it out, and he wrote his mother's number on the back of a permission slip and pressed it into her hand and left, looking back twice, the bomber jacket disappearing down the block where the businesses had all changed hands. He wasn't a villain. That was the whole trouble with him. He was a tired man who loved them from a sofa, and he'd walked in on the worst morning and pulled the one thread already loose. She took the children back toward the motel the long way, the way with the traffic lights, counting cars out of habit that had stopped being habit and become the whole shape of her attention. 2 blocks from the motel she saw the sedan again. Parked, nose to the doors, patient. This time she did not go to the window to look. This time she stood on the open sidewalk with a child's hand in each of hers, and she looked straight at it, at the dark shape behind the glass, and she let it see her seeing it. If the being seen was the point, she would answer the point. She would not hide from a car parked outside her own door. She had done that as a girl, and she was done doing it. The sedan's window came down 4 inches. No face. Just a hand and a phone held up, screen out, and on the screen a photograph, and even at 30 feet she knew what it was, because she'd lived it. The Route 9 flood, headlights on black water, her own drowned Honda, and under the photo, held up longer so she'd be sure to read it, a second image. The front of the community center, time-stamped that morning. Her, Amara on her hip, Noah's hand on the strap. Then the window went up, and the sedan pulled from the curb, unhurried, and turned east. East. Toward the airport, the way everything in this town turned lately. She stood on the sidewalk until it was gone. Her hands did not shake, because she would not let them, because Amara could feel a shake through a held hand. But her mind had gone very fast and very clear, the way it went when a plan was building itself out of the last thing she had, and the last thing she had was a single phone number. She got the children into the room, chair under the handle, chain, the proof still in the zippered pocket. Noah went straight to the corner of the bed and folded down again, and this time Amara, who understood nothing and everything, climbed up next to her brother and put the gold pendant into his hand instead of her own, which was the kindest thing Chanel had seen in a week, and which nearly finished her. She went into the bathroom so they wouldn't watch her face do it. She sat on the edge of the tub. She took out the prepaid phone. He answered on the first ring again. "They showed me a picture," she said, before he could speak. "The car that isn't yours. They rolled the window down and they showed me a phone. The flood. And my kids at the center this morning. Time-stamped. Then they drove east." Her voice was steady, and she was proud of the steadiness, and she despised needing to be. "They wanted me to know they have both. What we almost lost, and where to find us now. That's a message. You send messages. Tell me what it says." The line was quiet, and this quiet was different from all the earlier quiets, because this one had a decision in it that was already made and only needed saying. "It says, 'Come to me before she does anything else,'" Taesong said. "It says they know you are the reader. It says if they cannot use me clean, they will make me dirty a different way. Through you. A man who loses his temper over a woman and her children is a man who does something stupid on camera. That is what the picture is for, to move me. A breath. And it worked. I am moving." "Then stop moving and tell me the truth," she said. "All of it. Not a fact for a fact. Not the map. You. What you are. What you've done. Because I have 2 children in the next room and one of them won't lift his head, and I have said yes to a car and a coat and a phone from a man I let stay a stranger, and I am done letting you stay a stranger. If my babies are in the frame of your war, I get the whole picture, or I take them and I run tonight and you never read my map again." For a long time he said nothing. She let him have the nothing. She had learned that his nothings were where his truths were deciding whether to come out. "Not on a phone," he said at last. "Then where?" "The motel. Tonight. I come alone. No Hyunwoo. No car near the doors. I walk in and I sit down and I tell you everything, and after I tell you, you decide about the running. I will not stop you if you run, but you will run, knowing what you are running from." A pause. "You asked me once what I do. I told you your daughter was sleeping. She is older now, 3 days older. Something that was almost the ghost of a laugh and no humor in it, only the weight. I will answer the question." She looked at the bathroom door, the thin one, behind which her son sat folded around a pendant that wasn't his. "Come after they're asleep," she said. "You don't say a word in front of them. Whatever you are, they don't hear it from your mouth. They hear it from me. Later, in words I choose. Yes. Ann Taesong." She stood. Caught her own face in the spotted mirror, the long polished hair, the level eyes, the woman who blinded no one's children from panic tonight, because tonight she couldn't even blind her own. "The gentle didn't fool me, not for one night. I let you in because it was cold and there was water, and I have been reading you every hour since, same as you've been reading me. Whatever you tell me tonight, I've probably already half-guessed it, so don't clean it up. The clean version is how I'll know you're still watching my door instead of opening it." "I will not clean it," he said. She hung up. She washed her face in cold water. She went out and she made the children a dinner of crackers and 2 apples cut into boats, and she got into the middle of the bed with one of them under each arm, Noah rigid, then less rigid, then finally, at the far edge of sleep, unfolding by a degree, his forehead coming to rest against her collarbone, the way it hadn't in a week. "Mom," he said, mostly asleep. "Right here. Is the man coming tonight?" She had never lied to him. She wasn't going to start on the worst night. "Yes, after you're down. He's going to tell me true things. And in the morning I'll tell you the parts that are yours to have. Bad things. Some of them." Noah was quiet. Then, "The picture car. The one that showed you the phone." His voice small and going. "That's the bad guy, not the coat man. The coat man's scared. You said scared men are the most dangerous thing there is, or the most useful. You figured out which." She hadn't told him she'd figured it out. Maybe she hadn't, until he said it. Maybe the boy folded against the wall had done the reading she was too far inside to do. "Useful," she said quietly. "He's the most useful thing there is. Go to sleep." He slept. Amara slept. The pendant lay in the dark between the 3 of them, warm from all their hands. Chanel did not sleep. She sat up against the headboard in the room with the chair under the handle, and she watched the strip of light under the door, and she waited for the sound of a man who had promised to come alone and tell her what he was. Somewhere east on an old field, A plane sat held, and in a gray building on Commerce Street, a suite kept its lights on for accounts held on behalf of a name, and one street over a sedan idled with its heat let die, patient, letting itself be seen. And in a numbered room, a woman who had spent her whole life making sure no powerful man got to decide about her children, waited to let one in the door, because the door was already open, had been open since a flooded road, and the only choice left was whether she'd hear the truth sitting up or running. The light under the door stayed empty. Then, near midnight, it broke. A single shadow crossed it, and stopped, and did not knock, and waited to be told it could come in. Chanel opened the door before he could decide whether to knock a second time. Taesong stood under the dead bulb of the walkway, rain still on his shoulders, no coat over the leather jacket. He had come the way he said he would. No car near the doors, no Hyun-woo. She looked past him first, the lot, the road, the corner where the sedan had waited, and only then stepped back to let him in. "They're asleep," she said. "You talk low, or you don't talk." He came in and stood where she pointed, by the table, away from the beds. The chair was already under the handle behind him. She left it there. "You said you'd answer the question." She folded her arms. "The one you've been putting off since the road. What do you do?" He looked at the two shapes under the blanket. Noah's arm was thrown over his sister. The gold pendant lay in the boy's open palm. "I move money that came from bad places into places that look clean," Taesong said. "Ports, construction, loans no bank would write. Men pay us to make the dirty part disappear, and we take a piece of everything we touch." He kept his voice flat, no varnish on it. "I have hurt people who owed and would not pay. I have ordered it done when I was not in the room. 2 men are dead because I decided they should be. I did not pull the trigger. That does not matter." She held very still. She had asked for the unclean version, and he had given it. "The men who follow me follow because I am careful, and I have never lost," he went on. "That is the whole of it. I built something my father built before me, and I told myself I built it better because I never touched families." His jaw moved. "And then a corridor of closings ran straight through yours, with my name on the checks." "Say the rest," Chanel said. "You came to say a name. You've been carrying it for a week." He was quiet a long moment. Outside, a truck passed on the wet road and faded. "His office rents the suite," Taesong said. "The one in Seoul that answers for Meridian. I have known it since you said the address on the sidewalk. And I would not say it, because saying it out loud makes it real, and once it is real, I have to do something about it." He looked at her. "You told me to say it to myself before the week ended. I have not been able to." "Then say it to me." "Han Sok-jin." The name landed in the small room and sat there. 20 years, Taesong said. "Director of Operations. He signs what I do not have time to sign. He knows every route, every account, every man." Something in his face had gone from stone to something worse. "If it is him, then the plane, the fields marked closed, the corridor, all of it went through the one desk I never watched, because I never watched the desk of the man I trust." "You already believe it's him," she said. "You've believed it since the sidewalk. You just needed someone in the room when you finally stopped calling him a maybe." He did not argue. She crossed to the bag, unzipped the inner pocket, and took out the cigarette end she had kept from the gravel. She set it on the table between them. The man in the sedan smoked these. 2 of the same, ground out under the same shoe. "Your Hyun-woo doesn't smoke." "You don't." She tapped it once. "Whoever ran that sedan wasn't hired off a corner. He was patient. He knew when the center closed, which kids stayed late, where I walked. That's not surveillance you buy for a weekend. That's someone who's been told exactly who I am to you." Taesong picked up the cigarette end, turned it, put it down. "Sok-jin's men smoke this brand. It is imported. I bring it in myself, 3 cases a year, for the office." His hand closed. "He photographed your children with cigarettes I paid to bring into this country." There was a sound from the bed. Noah had shifted, eyes still closed, the pendant sliding in his fingers. They both stopped until his breathing evened out again. "You're going to the airport," Chanel said, low. "That's why the car turned east every night. Tell me what's there." "A shipment," he said. "Filed as agricultural freight through the regional field. Papers say it clears customs under a route I authorized. A private corridor. My signature, my company. If it moves, and it is what I think it is, then when it is caught, and it is built to be caught, the name on every document is mine, not his. Mine. I go to prison in this country. My organization is leaderless, and the man who has run operations for 20 years steps into the empty chair. Clean hands, grieving friend. He almost smiled, and it was terrible. He does not want me dead. A dead man is a martyr. He wants me alive and finished. When does it move? 3 days. The inspectors clear my plane in 2. He expects me gone the day before it lands. Flown out of reach, unable to stop it. My signature already in the system. He looked at her. He does not know I am still here. He thinks I am playing house with a woman on a county road because I lost my nerve after the crash. That is the one thing keeping him from moving early. So he thinks you're the fool. Chanel almost laughed and didn't. You told me you wanted to keep looking like the fool. Keep looking like it. For 3 more days, yes. She sat down slowly on the edge of the chair. The math had changed again, the way it kept changing on her since the night the car died. There's one piece you can't get from Seoul, she said. The corridor doesn't work unless the local end holds. The field, the road, the closings, the airport, somebody has to know this county cold to make freight vanish through a regional field without a single call getting made. You didn't build that. Seokjin didn't fly here and walk these roads. Somebody local sold him the map. She looked up. And I'm the only one in 300 miles who already had it. That is why he wants you gone or discredited, Taesong said. You are the witness who does not know she is a witness. No, she shook her head slowly. I'm the witness who can undo it. He built a corridor a mile long and called it real estate. I drove that mile for 6 years. I know which building's back lot connects to which service road, which gate the county left unlocked when the feed store closed, which permit the airport skipped because the parcel changed hands in January and nobody refiled. She was speaking faster now, the pieces sliding into line the way they had on the county computer. He needs the freight to look like it belongs. I can prove it doesn't. Every parcel, every date, every same address on Commerce Street. I've got it in a zippered pocket on 4 sticky notes and a 5th. Taesong looked at her for a long time. If you do this, he said, you are not a woman who got a ride in the rain anymore. You are the person who took down a route Seokjin spent a year building. He will know it was you. He already sent a car to photograph my son, she said. I'm past the part where staying quiet keeps us safe. They did not sleep. She made instant coffee in the room's plastic pot, and they sat across the small table and built it the only way it could be built, out of what she knew and what he could prove. By 4 in the morning it had a shape. Taesong would let the inspectors clear the plane and let Seokjin believe he had flown out. In truth, he would stay. Hyunwoo would pull the surveillance in tight and quiet. And Chanel would put on paper what only she could see. A map of the corridor with every closing dated, every parcel tied by the same registered agent to East Meridian, the 2 nearest airfields falsely marked closed on the flight packet, the unlicensed service road the freight would have to use because the legitimate gate had a camera the county actually maintained. You give this to who? She said. Not the county. The county sold half of it. There is a federal task force that has wanted a reason to open my organization for 6 years, Taesong said. They have never had a witness. They have never had a document. He turned the 5th sticky note in his fingers. You are both. And you walk into that. She watched him. You hand them the thing they've wanted for 6 years. I hand them the freight, the route, and the man who forged my authorization on it, he said. I hand them Seokjin. What they do with the rest of me after that is a fight for a different week. He set the note down. A man who runs what I run does not get to be clean, but he can choose what he burns down on his way out, and who he burns it for. She almost said something and didn't. She got up and checked on the children instead. Amara had rolled to the wall. Noah's eyes were open in the dark. How long have you been awake? Chanel said quietly. Since he said the name, Noah said. Han Seokjin. He said it carefully, the way he'd learned to hold things he didn't understand yet. Is that the bad guy? The car with the man? That's the bad guy, she said. The car with the man. Noah thought about that in the dark. The one who lied to him, he said, though no one had used that word, and she realized he had stitched it together from the man's voice alone, the way he stitched everything. Something like that, she said. You'll understand the rest when you're bigger. You always say that. I always mean it. And the coat man's helping. She looked back at Taesong, who had heard, and who sat with his hands flat on the table, waiting to be judged by a 7-year-old. The coat man's helping, she said. The next 2 days moved like held breath. The inspectors cleared the plane on a Thursday. A car took Taesong to the small field at the end of the access road, and he boarded in full view of anyone watching, and the plane rose east and turned north and, 40 minutes later, landed at a field 2 counties over, where Hyun-woo met it with a different car and brought him back in the dark, low in the seat. To Seoul, to the desk of Han Sok-jin, Yoon Tae-sung was now 300 miles away and out of the game. Chanel wrote. She sat at the county computer with Mrs. Alvarez keeping the children in the reading corner, and she built the document one dated line at a time. The center was closing Friday. She had a badge for one more day. She used every hour of it. Marcus came by Thursday afternoon. He stood in the doorway in the khaki bomber and watched her work and did not ask what it was. You didn't call the number, he said. My mother's number. No. You're not sending them. It wasn't a question about his mother anymore. He looked at Noah in the reading corner, at Amara's chiquinas bent over a book. Whatever this is, you're standing in it instead of running. I've been running my whole life, Marcus, she said. It's why we don't have a car and you don't have an address. I'm tired of the shape of it. He was quiet. Then he crossed the room and crouched by Noah and said something low, and Noah leaned into him for the first time in a year, and Marcus held the back of his son's head the way a man does when he's decided to try. He wasn't a villain, he was a tired man who loved from the couch, but he stayed the whole afternoon, and when he left he said, "Call if the car comes, I'll come stand in the road with you," and for once she believed he might. Friday, the freight moved. It came into the regional field at dusk, filed as agricultural equipment, papers clean, a route authorization on file under Yoon Tae-sung's signature and seal. Everything exactly as Sok-jin had built it. A self-solving crime that pointed at one man 300 miles away. Except the man was in a car at the edge of the airport road with the woman who had driven that road for 6 years. And the woman had a folder, and the folder had already been in federal hands since Thursday night. They did not watch it happen from the field. Tae-sung would not put her near it. They watched from the county library parking lot 2 miles off, on the prepaid phone, Hyun-woo feeding them the word as it came. The service road the freight had to use, the unlicensed one, the one Chanel had flagged because the legitimate gate had a working camera, had a checkpoint on it now that had not been there a week ago. The freight rolled to the checkpoint expecting nothing because the man who planned it believed no one local could possibly know that gate mattered. They took the freight. They took the drivers. And in the documents seized at the scene, the route authorization did not close the case the way Sok-jin had built it to, because a second folder, filed by a witness, laid the forged signature next to the real maintenance logs, next to the interception of the 2 nearest fields, next to a year of parcel closings that all mailed to Suite 240, next to the fuel pressure fault signed fixed in Seoul 3 weeks before it was ever installed. The plane had never been meant to crash. It had been meant to force a landing, to strand Yoon Tae-sung alive on a county road while his name was walked into a federal trap. The folder said all of it. The folder had a name for the architect, and the name was not Yoon Tae-sung. They arrested Han Sok-jin in Seoul on a Sunday, in a gray suit with a pocket square and a fountain pen still in the inner pocket, and the pen never signed the thing he had spent a year building. It should have felt like winning. Tae-sung sat in the motel room across from Chanel that night, and it did not look like a man who had won. 20 years, he said. I stood at his father's funeral. I carried the box. His hands were open on the table, and I have been trying, since the sidewalk, to understand why. He would have had everything. He did have everything. He didn't have the chair, Chanel said gently. You had the chair. There is more. He took something from inside the jacket. An envelope, old. The paper soft with handling. When they went into his father's records for the case, they found this. Hyun-woo brought it to me an hour ago. He set it on the table but did not open it. My mother died when I was 19. That is what I was told. My father told me she left, and then that she died, and I built the rest of my life on the shape of a woman who did not want me. Chanel did not move. She wrote to me, Taesong said, for years, after my father sent her away. Not dead, sent away, because she wanted me out of the life and he would not allow it. She wrote every month. The letters came to the office. His voice did not break. It went somewhere flatter and harder than breaking. Sekjin's father ran the office. He held them. Every one. He told my father it was handled, and it was handled. And I grew up believing my mother left me, and it made me exactly the kind of man they needed me to be. A man with no family. A man who believed men like us cannot have one. He opened the envelope then. Inside was not a letter. It was an address, recent, in a city 3 hours from the field, and a photograph. An old woman, gray hair and a low knot, a bedgy cardigan, a wristwatch too big for her thin wrist, standing in a doorway squinting at whoever held the camera. She is alive, he said. Song Mi-ja, 64. She has been alive the whole time, 3 hours away, in a country I have flown over 100 times. He looked up, and for the first time since the road, Chanel saw the man under the stone. They took her letters, so I would grow into a man who could be used. And it worked. For 20 years it worked. She reached across the table and, for the first time, she touched him, her hand flat over the back of his, the hand that had hovered an inch from her back on the flooded road and never landed. She let it land now. Then the thing they built you to be, she said, is the thing you get to stop being. Tonight, here. He drove to the city 3 hours away on a Tuesday. He did not take Hyunwoo to the door. He went up the walk alone and knocked, and a small woman opened it in a gray skirt and a beige cardigan, and looked at him with his own dark eyes, and put her marked hand over her mouth. Neither of them could speak for a long time. She had written for years. She had stopped writing when the letters started coming back. She had believed her son had chosen the life and chosen against her. He knelt on her doorstep, a man who had ordered deaths, and put his head against his mother's hands, and let 20 years fall out of him on a stranger's front step. The empire did not survive intact, and he did not try to make it. He gave the federal task force the freight, the route, the man, and a great deal more than they had asked for. In exchange, the legitimate parts of what he ran, the real construction, the real ports, the businesses that were only businesses, were allowed to be pulled out from under the rest and moved. He moved them to the United States. He signed papers he had spent his whole life avoiding signing. He divided power he had spent his whole life keeping whole, and handed pieces of it to people who would run it in the light, and kept less for himself than he had ever imagined keeping. He bought a house, not a penthouse, a house, 2 streets from the school, with a yard where a fence had rotted and would need replacing, close enough that a boy could walk to it and a girl could ride a bike. Chanel did not move into it. She was not a woman who moved into a man's house because he had proven he could stay. She kept the small apartment she found when the motel bill would no longer stretch, and she took a job coordinating after-school programs for the county. The same work, a real desk, a salary that did not end in 2 weeks. The center that East Meridian had closed reopened under a different name, because the freight case had frozen the holding's assets and the building came back onto the market, and a man with newly legitimate money bought it and put her name nowhere on the deed and her hand on every decision. He proved permanence the way she had told him to, without a single grand gesture. He showed up. Tuesdays for the reading program. The morning the school called about Noah's field trip fee, it was already paid, quietly, and he never mentioned it. He learned the road she drove, and he never once put a car on it that she had not chosen. Noah's 8th birthday was in the yard of the house with the rotted fence. Chanel wore a green dress, emerald, simple, sandals, the gold chain at her throat where it had been through all of it. Amara had a new set of Priscillas and would not stop showing them to anyone who held still. Marcus came, in the khaki bomber, and stood a little apart at first, and then Noah pulled him into a game with the other boys and he stayed. Easy, a father learning the shape of showing up. Taesong came in a gray sweater, no jacket, the dragon at his neck bare to the afternoon light, and he carried a folding table because they were short one, and he set it up without being asked, and did not stand at the head of anything. And near the end of the afternoon, a car pulled up slow, and a small woman got out in a bedgy cardigan and a wristwatch too big for her wrist, and Taesong went to the curb and gave her his arm, and brought his mother across the grass to where Chanel stood with the two children. Song Mi-ja looked at Noah a long moment, and at Amara, and then at Chanel, and she said something in Korean that Chanel did not understand, and Taesong's throat worked before he translated it. She says, he said, that a house is only a house until there are children in the yard. Amara, who feared no one, walked straight up to the old woman and held out the gold pendant on its chain in her open palm, the way she had held it out to her brother in the dark of a motel room a lifetime ago, offering the thing she loved to a person she had decided to keep. Mi-ja knelt, slow, her marked hands closing gently around the child's, and did not take the pendant. She folded the girl's fingers back over it, and she stayed kneeling there in the grass, level with the children, the way her son had once knelt to the window of a dead car in the rain, and looked at them like a woman looking at something she had been told for 20 years she would never have. Noah watched all of it, measuring, the way he measured everything. Then he crossed the grass and stood next to the coat man, no coat now, just the sweater, and did not lean on him and did not speak. He just stood close, on purpose, where he could be seen. Taesong looked down at the boy who had voted, on a flooded road, to let him come near. He did not say anything. He had spent his whole life being careful with what he said. He put his hand on the back of Noah's head, light, the way a man does when he has finally decided to stay, and the boy let him, and the yard was loud with children, and the old woman was still kneeling in the grass, and the woman in the green dress was watching the four of them, the way you watch a thing you built with your own hands, out of everything that had almost drowned. The dead car, the rain, the road with too many new owners, all of it had been leading here, to a fence that needed fixing, and a table that needed carrying, and a hand on a boy's head that landed, at last, and stayed. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever shielded the people you love from a fear you were carrying alone? Have you ever pieced together a truth that everyone around you refused to see and paid a price for knowing it? What would you risk to protect a family the powerful had already decided to erase? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about truth, loyalty, and redemption, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.